Well, hello, hello. Welcome to Happy Hour for Friday, January 21st. Happy Hour is a weekly show I do on Actively Unwoke and also on Odyssey and also on Rockfin, where we watch a woke training and we make fun of it and we have some drinks. But the point of Actively Unwoke is that we are watching the full form of these woke training exercises. Sometimes we watch them in schools, sometimes we watch them in universities, sometimes we watch just lectures that people do on the internet, sometimes we watch podcasts, sometimes we watch conventions, we watch the whole spectrum of woke. And the reason that we want to do this is because we want to make sure we understand what critical race theory is and critical studies and all this stuff, because it's not just critical race theory. That's what we're going to be doing today. But sometimes we venture into queer studies. Sometimes we venture into fat studies. Fat studies is terrifying. Fat studies is the most terrifying land in all of critical theory. It's crazy. Side note, you know what I figured out like a month ago or so? Is that every fat studies professor is also an amateur porn star. Fun fact, every single fat advocate that you see on the internet is almost always going to also be an amateur porn star. Don't go down that rabbit hole. I am warning you now. Do not go down the rabbit hole of fat studies into amateur porn star. It's like a whole other realm. I have seen things I can't unsee. Anyway, why we watch woke training start to finish is we want to make sure we understand what they're fully teaching, because the headlines that you read, the sound bites you hear on Fox News or Newsmax or OAN or on Twitter, they're usually not the worst parts of the training. They're usually not the most important parts of the training. And so the general public and, the political right have one idea of what this training looks like. But we know on Happy Hour that it is actually a lot more terrifying. That's why we know that Glenn Youngkin's executive order in Virginia did not really ban critical race theory. Because the problem is they didn't ban the way it was actually taught. We know that because we watch Happy Hour. We watch the full training from start to finish. Today, we are going to be watching a training. It's not even a training. It's a video of a lecture from the University of Denver. You can see it in the slides. This is from January 2019, so a little bit old. But the reason I wanted to watch this is a full college lecture about critical whiteness studies. People are paying money to learn this. This is what is being taught in colleges and universities. Now, it is not on the university webpage. It is on a webpage for an organization called Reset Race Network. Reset Race is all about changing how we view race in the United States. We unapologetically support reparations for U.S. freedmen, and part of that mission is to point out when content creators on the American left are wrong, right, and it's complicated. Our mission is expanding. Stay tuned, but they've got racial justice stuff. They've got all the typical stuff, and they posted this lecture from the University of Denver about critical whiteness studies. So we're going to watch that, and we're going to talk about it, and we're going to drink some beer. I do see some messages in the chat asking how Joshua is. That's a good question. I have not texted Joshua in a couple days. I hope that he is well. I'm sure he's fine. I'm sure he's going to be fine, and I will update you guys when I know more information. But Joshua better make it. Oh my God, I cannot imagine. I don't know if I'd be able to be functional without Joshua in my life. Truly. But before we get into it, guys, we have a couple orders of business. I fucking messed up one of them. Okay, here we go. We have a couple orders of business to take care of. Number one, you have to download your Unwoke Bingo card. This might be a great day for Unwoke Bingo. We usually tend to have some luck when it comes to college lectures, especially the older ones. So we tend to have luck with older lectures with the Unwoke Bingo card. So it's in the description, no matter what channel you're watching on, go to Generate Card. How we play Unwoke Bingo is you get a free square in the middle, and then we're going for lines, or we're going for corners. Once you get a bingo, please yell out bingo in the chat, and you will be rewarded with cheers and applause and a hearty congratulations. Once someone gets a bingo, We then go for blackout bingo. We've gotten close to blackout bingo. I think Sin has gotten the closest. She was just a couple squares off one happy hour. I know it's going to happen someday. And pay attention because during the presentation, I may make up rules. I may give away free spaces. One of the rules that we have, and this is obviously not going to be, it's not going to be relevant for this presentation because this is from early 2019. But if Chris Rufo is ever mentioned in a happy hour, free square for everyone. So I may make up rules during the presentations. I may give away free squares. You got to keep on your toes and we'll see what happens. So that's what we want to do. We also want to make sure that you are aware of activelyunwoke.com. We are watching on YouTube, most of you, on my second channel, which is called Actively Unwoke. I have to update the branding on the YouTube channel. I promise I will. We're still going to keep the fox as our spirit animal. The fox is still going to be our spirit animal. I haven't gotten rid of the fox. I just am updating the branding to make it look like the book because I love the little TV with the eye. I just love it. It's so cool. They did such a good job. So activelyunwoke.com is a platform that is going to support people fighting back against the woke. It is also, by pure coincidence, the name of the book that I wrote on this specific topic. This book is available for pre-order right now if you go to activelyunwoke.com. And let me just pop that link in the chat for all of you. I will pop it in the chat on YouTube. I will pop it in the chat on Rockfin. I will pop it in the chat on Odyssey. And if you go to activelyunwoke.com right now, you can pre-order the book on Amazon. You can also pre-order on non-Amazon. If you don't want to order on Amazon, you don't have to. There are lots of options. But this is a book that I wrote that is about how you fight back. It is filled with case studies of real people just like you who have fought back against woke insanity in their lives in the real world. It is filled with actionable tactics that you can use to fight back. Real things that anyone can do. I've got a chapter in it about what to do if you're canceled. I've got a chapter in it about self-care. I've got several chapters that are decoding the woke. So this is going to be a great gift for your friends and family that are just learning about this. I have written the whole thing in plain English so that everyone can understand it. It's not complicated or academic-y or anything like that. That's what you're going to find in the book, but there are other things on activelyunwoke.com. Like this live events page that we're going to open up right now. You can see I've got a couple things. I'm going to be lining up a series of events where I want to give people, again, highly actionable, highly practical things that they can do. These are going to be in webinar format. What that means is that it's not going to be broadcast live on YouTube. It's going to be a private presentation. You're going to log into my private system. And the reason that's important is I don't want you exposing your identity to the general public. I don't want to put you in danger on YouTube if you're asking a question. I want you to be able to ask your questions so that you get answers. Now, I'm going to be recording these presentations, so they will be made public, but I will be doing it in a way where it is going to protect the identity of everyone that attends. So I don't want anyone getting doxxed or canceled or anything like that purely because they showed up to one of my webinars, okay? We've got a couple webinars coming up. The first one's going to be given by me. I'm going to be talking about what critical race theory is in plain language that anyone can understand. This is going to be a great webinar for your friends and family that maybe have heard of critical race theory but don't really know what it is. For you guys that attend happy hour every week, this is going to be a little basic. I'm just going to warn you. You can come if you want to, but it's going to be like intro level. But for people who are just getting into this, who don't know what critical race theory really is, or maybe they listen to pundits on Fox News and they have a very different idea of what it is if they do that, this is going to be a great resource. So we're going to do that on February 1st. And then on February 11th, I've got Nicole Solis coming on, and she is going to teach you guys how to do public records requests. I think that this is one of the most actionable, important things that people can do. Chris Rufo is working on pushing educational transparency bills around the country, and that's really amazing because that's going to force teachers to put their educational materials online. But until that happens, the very best resource we have to find out what is going on in the schools is parents doing public records requests. I don't know how to do those, but Nicole Solis does. She's a lawyer. She's an amazing fighter. Spitfire of a woman. Ultimate respect for her. She wrote so many public records requests for her daughter's school that the teachers' unions actually sued her to prevent her from getting access to this information. So she's going to teach us how it's done. She's going to teach you the keywords to look for. She's going to teach you what needs to be in those requests. It's going to be an amazing show, and that's going to be on February 11th. I will tell you that both of those webinars still have plenty of space in them, but both of them are filling up. My webinar is currently 25% of the way full. Nicole's webinar is 20% of the way full. That's a lot for this far out. I've done a million webinars for my organizational psychology thing. That's a lot for this far out. Usually webinar registrations will come in right before the events, and that's when they really fill up. But these are already starting to fill up. So make sure you get registered if you want to come. You send it out to your friends and family. Let's fill up these webinars, get as many people in them as we can. I also, of course, have our book club coming up that we're doing as part of my Locals community. Now, Locals is a place where I think I have the best Locals community on the internet. You can join at kb.locals.com. But in order to get access to my book club, you do need to become a supporter. You need a little skin in the game. It's an extra perk, an extra benefit to supporting the work I'm trying to do. And it's totally affordable for everyone. If you want to join my Locals, it is $5 a month. You pay more for a cup of coffee. Okay? $5 a month. You can go get in at the annual option for $50 a year, which gives you 2 months for free. You can also make a one-time gift. I do have other options for one-time gifts. You can do PayPal, you can do crypto. All that information is in the description if you want to go that route. But the reason I like to take one-time gifts through my Locals is that you also get access to Locals for like the duration of your gift. So how awesome is that? You get like a twofer. I get supported, which I really appreciate, and then you get access to Locals. And that's what you need to do if you want to come to this book club that I'm doing on February 20th. We are reading The R of the Mind. I can't say that word because I'll get instantly demonetized. But this is a book. Let me read the description. In 1933, Merleau began to study the methods by which systematic mental pressure brings people to abject submission, and by which totalitarians imprint their subjective truths on their victims' minds. In The R of the Mind, he goes far beyond the direct military implications of mental torture to describe how our own culture unobtrusively shows symptoms of pressurizing people's minds. This is research that was done in the 30s, and it is highly relevant to what is going on today. I'll tell you, I started reading this book the other night. It is scary. Joining us for this book club is going to be a woke whistleblower himself, Aaron Kinsvatter. Aaron blew the whistle on the University of Vermont for their overtly woke practices, and he is now a counselor in private practice. He's a wonderful person. He's one of my favorite people in the world. He has been such a resource and a blessing to me, and I'm thrilled that he's going to be joining us for our book club to discuss this book. The reason that Aaron is joining us is that he was the one that introduced me to the book. So I'm really looking forward to that on February 20th. You have to become a member of my Locals in order to get access to that exclusive perk. All right, guys. Now, of course, we have one more order of business before we have to get started. I need to get a beer. And of course, you guys get to help me pick out a beer. Now, I've got a bunch of options here today. Don't worry. I'm not going to drink all these beers, but I want to show you guys what I got. Victor and I went to the beer store earlier. Now, the first beer I have, I don't think I'm gonna drink this on the stream, but I wanted to show this to you guys. It's called Almond Pop. It's an imperial stout, and this beer has almonds, vanilla, marshmallows, cake. This beer has cake in it. The reason I bought this beer is that this single bottle of beer was $20. And I was like, why is that beer $20? What is going on with that beer? It's from Equilibrium Brewing, which is in New York. 11% alcohol, so not like it's a very alcoholic beer. But I'm putting this one to the side for right now. I just wanted to show it to you guys because I'm actually really excited about drinking it, and I kind of wanted to show it off. I paid $20 for it. I should get some mileage out of that beer. But I've got some other beers. I've got some SJW beers this time. Check this out. Okay, I've got some SJW beer. Hang on. Okay. Let's see. This beer, look, he's wearing a pussy hat on the beer. I had to buy it. It actually does sound like a good beer too, but I had to. I was like, this is the best SJW beer ever. I don't know why they didn't make the pussy hat pink, but this dude is literally wearing a pussy hat on the beer. And it's called I Just Want to Be Puree. That's what it's called. I Just Want to Be Puree. This is a Mai Tai beer. It is a sour ale with pineapple, orange, and lime, which I actually think sounds delightful. You know, let's not judge a beer by the SJW on the bottle. Maybe the beer is actually pretty good. Who knows? So that's one of our options. Our second option that I'm really excited about is called Electric Love, and it is a raspberry lime Ricky. And I think the can looks really cool. And I love raspberry and lime. So this is another sour beer. It's a popsicle style sour ale. So I think that looks pretty good. And then I have this is oh god, no, Lisa, we don't drink IPAs. IPAs are gross. IPAs are a pissing contest for men who want to like compete against each other for how bitter they can go. I've got this milk stout. This is called Move On Up. It's got a cow on it. I just wanted a stout. There were like no stout singles today in the beer store. This is a stout brewed with cocoa nips and cold brew coffee. And then the last one. Oh my god, you guys are gonna die. Victor picked this one out. Victor picked this out. It's a cheesecake beer. This beer is cheesecake. Here's what it has in it. Sour ale with sweet cherry puree, graham cracker, cream cheese, and vanilla. A cheesecake beer. That's for dessert right there. So those are our beers. My preference is to start with one of the sour ales. So which one do you guys want me to start with? Do you want me to start with the Pussy Hat beer, I Just Want to Be Pure? Or do you want me to start with the Raspberry Lime Ricky? Go ahead and chat in, and I will start with whatever beer you guys pick out. We're going for SJW beer or Raspberry Lime Ricky. Let me know which one you guys want me to choose. And in the meantime, I'm going to get set up to be able to actually stream the sound for happy hour. Because I know there's a little delay for the chat. All right. All right. Here's our program. We're ready to go. Let me see. Raspberry Lime, SJW, Raspberry Lime, SJW, SJW. I think it has to be the SJW, doesn't it? It's a pretty even split. I have to do the SJW beer. I have to. I'm more excited about the raspberry lime beer, and possibly we'll get to the raspberry lime beer. But I have to. Oh my god. Okay. I have to. Here, let me make me big again. You guys can see me pour. This is it's only 5%. It's only 5%, so I can probably drink another one and not be falling over or anything. So that'll be good. Okay. Ooh, it looks very pineapple-y and orangey. It does look like a Mai Tai, doesn't it? It looks a little thick. I need an umbrella or an orange slice or something. It smells like juice. It does smell like pineapple. What are you guys drinking in the chat? Chat in what you're going to be enjoying for happy hour today. You don't have to drink alcohol if you don't want to, or if you're sober and being responsible. But coffee, tea, vodka, beer. All right. It's so it's much more creamy than I thought it would be. Hang on. It's pulpy. You can see the pulp. It's good though. This is one of those beers that would actually be like really dangerous on like a summer day because it doesn't taste like beer. This does not taste like beer. It does not taste like alcohol in any way. It tastes like juice. Yeah, that beer is good. It might be SJW. And it might be a little it does not taste like beer. Let's see. What are you guys drinking in the chat? You guys are so boring. No offense. Water, tea, Mountain Dew. I haven't had a Mountain Dew in like years and years and years. Raspberry lemonade with a shot of rose water. Spirit matter, I can't do rose water. I can't. I do not understand it. Dr. Pepper. Oh, emphasize. Maker's Mark cast strength. There you go, emphasize. I like that. Metastep's gonna take a bong rip. Good for you, man. Good for you. Wine for Jess T. All right, guys. Well, we have our beer. Everyone got their bingo cards. Are we ready to get started? If you're ready to go ahead and chat in. Let's see. Mark Johnson, I see you over on Rockfin. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for everyone who's watching on Rockfin. Guys, please make sure, just in case, always make sure you're subscribed on Alt Tech. I broadcast happy hour every Friday, and actually all of my 5 o'clock streams on both Odyssey and Rockfin is backup, just in case something happens with the YouTubes. And of course, make sure you join my locals for free if you haven't already, just at kb.locals.com. That's a place where I'll be able to communicate with you if I get censored or banned on things and stuff like that. All right, we're ready to go. So let's get this party started. Let's get started with happy hour.
Faculty, staff, and students, I'm really excited to be here. I am this school year's.
Okay, I think the volume is a little bit low and I can't make this go up any higher. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to turn my mic volume down and I'm going to ask you guys to turn the volume on your computer up. Okay? Because this video's volume is a little bit low. So that's how we're going to accommodate this. If we need to finagle the volume a little bit more, we can. Please let me know if it turns out to be okay, but I'm turning the volume on my mic down. And that way you can turn the volume on your computer up and make it a little louder.
Visiting associate professor, the IRISE visiting associate professor. And it's been a really welcoming and wonderful experience here at DU thus far. I've been at CUDN for 10 years. So I've been in Colorado for over 10 years. And it's been nice to see the other campus, you know. We don't mention your name on that campus. But yeah, I have prepared a full PowerPoint lecture presentation, but I woke up this morning panicked and saying I really didn't want to do that, being that this is probably one of the first experiences.
Thank you, Live Free or Die. I appreciate that.
At DU, and therefore I wanted to really give you, the audience, time to have some dialogue with me so I can address all your questions. So I wanted to, despite all that nerdiness that I have up here, and I might flip back and forth, I thought that we can kind of do it more informally, more organically, more like a workshop classroom type setting. Is that okay? Because I could always talk for an hour and a half, you know? So yeah, I figured that might better meet the needs of our community here at DU. How many of you, I see some faces, were here yesterday, came to the White and Fragility panel? I see some faces.
Am I still too loud?
Well, that's wonderful. So I gave you a little bit of snippets there.
Oh, they had a White Fragility panel. That's good.
We do have one of the professors here.
That's about as good as that's going to get, I think.
Gabor here, who was one of the panelists, which talked a lot about how
it is a reaction stream, so I should actually be louder than the presenter.
That's getting a lot of it's like the new buzzword, right? Don't be so fragile.
Patrice says the volume is good.
Or like I see T-shirts that say
Patrice is the queen.
Fragility, or like tears, white fragility tears or something like that. So it's getting a lot of
okay, I'll turn it down a little bit
more. And we're talking about it in different ways. So great. And Robin DiAngelo, just for anyone, is actually a good personal friend of mine. I call her the scariest white woman I've ever known.
Really? Well, that tells us a lot about this presenter, doesn't it? Personal friend of Robin.
I figured I'd talk a little bit
This is when Robin was still in the good graces.
I do a lot of work on the emotionalities of whiteness.
So Robin DiAngelo, when this was recorded, was still in the good graces of like the anti-racist community. Do you guys notice that we haven't really heard from Robin DiAngelo since her new book came out, and her new book wasn't really that successful? Robin DiAngelo, and I did see Progressive Rising ask earlier in the chat if I'll do a reaction video to Nice Racism. I need to finish Nice Racism. I never finished it. I do have it. I started reading it. But Nice Racism is Robin DiAngelo's new book that came out. And have you guys heard anything about that book? You want to know why? because Robin DiAngelo, here's what I think. I think it was always weird that Robin DiAngelo was a white lady in the anti-racist space to begin with, but then Robin DiAngelo had, I think, way too many clips of her saying that, like, all white people are racist and that she's a racist, and I think that they've started kind of, like, disaffiliating with her because of that. So although Robin DiAngelo's book, White Fragility, did push a lot of this nonsense onto us. That's not to say that, like, Kendi and all the other anti-racist people didn't have a hand in it, because they absolutely did, but, like, Robin DiAngelo's book was the epicenter of a lot of this bullshit. And we haven't heard from her lately, and I think it's a couple reasons. I think it's because she was a white woman. I think it's because she talked a little bit too much about how she was a racist. I think she had way too many incriminating things on video, and it started to look foolish. I also think her new book, which was attacking white progressives for being not good enough at being anti-racist, I'm sure that hit like a ton of bricks. So Robin DiAngelo was in the good graces when this lecture was filmed. She is no longer in the good graces now, which, thank God for small favors, but it doesn't actually fix the problem.
Psychoanalytic research on how this emotionality of whiteness impacts
Yeah,
urban
Just
teaching,
T. Just
urban
T. I
classrooms.
think you're right about this, Just T. She says probably because of the CRT backlash as well. Maybe they need to rethink their strategy. I absolutely think that this was part of, like, the backlash against CRT. I absolutely agree with that.
As well as just education writ large. I am an education professor, so that's kind of the realm that I go in. And I have all the beautiful slides and the psychoanalytics.
Good to see you on Odyssey,
where
Liberty
it
Lion.
comes from, how it impacts one's identity, and therefore I have all that. But I wanted to pull back a little bit more further and just talk about, well, first of all, what is whiteness? What is critical whiteness studies? What is it? What are some of the elements that doesn't make it critical whiteness studies, or some critiques about critical whiteness studies? What are some other theories and stuff that I might be able to use to investigate whiteness? So I kind of wanted to pull back and just kind of go on the Cliff Note version, if you will, if that's okay with you. That's cool. All right. So before we begin, why don't we start with tell me what you know about race and racism. So tell me, whoa, just for a pedagogical strategy, those of you that teach race and diversity, and people are like, I don't want to talk. You have them write on a Post-it note and say, what can you not talk about race? And then have them all bring it up. And then, just one by one, my beautiful crane here, you read, oh, why can't we talk about this? And guess what? 15 minutes later, you're all talking about race, So tell me, what do you know about race and racism? Oh, we don't do the hand. You don't have to raise hand too. Just vibe with each other, and call out.
It's a made-up construct.
Race is a made-up construct.
You're talking about race specifically.
Yeah.
College level class. Race is made up.
Institutions can maintain racism, or do maintain.
Estheticians maintain racism. All right.
Can you give me an example?
I haven't heard that before.
Sure, the government or a university can maintain certain people with certain statuses or privileges in power.
Okay.
What does that have to do with it? Did she say esthetician?
Are you coming from the calculus class? Did I steal some students? Come on in. We just started. And I for those of you that are just coming in, well, there's quite a few of you. Welcome. What's up? Y'all came from the same gym class or something, huh?
Yeah, I want to say to where is it? Breaking the flaw. I'm sorry. I was driving to this rally. So what you're talking about is the secession rally. Here's what happened. I was literally driving there, and then my car started to make like a really weird noise, and it felt like there was something wrong with my steering wheel. And Concord is like 40 minutes north. And so I basically pulled into the Dunkin' Donuts, kind of like assessed the situation and decided to drive home. But I was literally on my way to the rally and I was just like, I don't feel comfortable. The car's making a weird noise. I don't want to get stranded on the side of the road. I have a stream later. So I basically drove home. Victor's going to look in the car. Victor thinks a stick got up in it or something. I don't really freaking know. Like, I don't know anything about cars because it was parked on like the lawn for a day when the plows were plowing their driveway from the snow. So I want you to know I was actually going to go. I was on my way, and it was a mechanical difficulty. And so hopefully we'll see you next time. I'm sorry I wasn't there. If you guys haven't watched, and I was actually thinking about doing this, so New Hampshire had a committee hearing yesterday to hear testimony for the bill to secede from the union. There was some amazing testimony. Carla Garrick did a great job. Justin O'Donnell knocked it out of the park. There was just some really good testimony that came out of that hearing yesterday. I was actually thinking about maybe next week streaming some of the speeches because it was really fascinating to listen to the different perspectives. And maybe I'll try to get like a libertarian group to react to the speeches and we can talk about it. But it was really good. I encourage everyone to watch it. Follow the LPNH account on Twitter. I know they've been tweeting some of the stuff about it. And even if you don't believe in secession, and I understand why people might not, it was a really fascinating conversation. And I think that, we should appreciate the fact that we're allowed to have that conversation, regardless of what the Democrats who introduced that bill, opposing anyone who even remotely supports this bill might think.
There's a seat. There's a seat right here too, and we can go here, and then we can pull these chairs because there's no. All good. It's all good. I'll just point you all out when you leave. There's chairs here. No one's using these chairs. You sure? Okay, that's the difference between young knees and 40 plus runners' knees. I'm like, I can't do that. Okay, so just for the people who came in a little bit late, I was just telling the group that I did have a formal presentation prepared, but I figure I'm going to do it more workshop, classroom based, and have a lot of dialogue from you so that I can really get some of your questions and your pressing concerns about whiteness, because I know you think about it all day long, discussed. So, okay, we're talking about what do you know about race and racism? People talked about it's a made up construct. Other people say it's institutions maintain racism. Give me more.
Oh, institutions, not estheticians. Institutions maintain racism. That makes so much more sense.
There's no actual biological base for it, but it has real social consequences, and I would argue past social.
So is race a construct, or does race have a biological base to it? Because they've already contradicted themselves.
I'm doing my best to write as nice as possible. Go ahead.
The audience are college students. This is at the University of Denver.
And why would that be?
Because we've grown up in a society that is,
Has anyone ever read George Yancey's Dear America, Dear White America from the New York Times? Oh, y'all got to take my class then. It was a few years ago. George Yancey's a philosopher. He's a Black philosopher, professor at, I might get this wrong, Emory? Somewhere on the East Coast, somewhere near Philly or Pittsburgh. Okay, my bad. It's somewhere around that region, okay? And he wrote an open...
all universities are liberal, progressive, rising.
Editor, Dear White America.
Except for like 2.
And he kind of related the whole systemic issues of like this concept. But he first began with patriarchy, something that, isn't as scary for women to say. I don't know why women say down with the patriarchy. It's like, where did the come from? But here's a good example. He makes the argument that in an institution of patriarchy, men, whether they want to or not, men who benefit from a system of patriarchy in a society that is patriarchal, are sexist because they benefit. Now, he can say he can be personally anti-sexist, as much as possible, but as a man, he still benefits from it. and therefore still is considered in a larger scale sexist. So I guess, is that what you're trying to get at? Okay, so that larger, there's a good whiteness scholar. If you haven't read the works from Dr. Ricky Lee Allen, he has a
Whiteness
really good
scholar.
pieces. He's a white male, and he's from the area. What? Let me get it right.
So I want to make a note here, because when people like her use the term whiteness today, what they generally mean is who owns the power structure. But this lecture was in 2019. So we always have to keep in mind that the woke are constantly and perpetually evolving their language. They will evolve their language to whatever is the most politically convenient thing for it to mean at the time. What I believe we're going to hear is that when she's talking about white and whiteness in this lecture, because it was 2019, which is pre-George Floyd, I believe they are actually talking about skin color, because this is at a place where they weren't getting as much pushback yet. They weren't having as many Black people come out and saying, no, I don't believe in this stuff. And so when she's using the terms white or whiteness in this lecture, I do believe she's going to be talking about the color of your skin. But that is not the same way in which they're using whiteness today, which is something that we need to pay attention to. Listen, we always need to be prepared that the woke are going to constantly be evolving and changing their definitions. And just because a definition was true in 2019 when this lecture happened does not mean that's what they mean today. And what I want us to keep in mind is that we need to know what they actually mean behind the current words that they're using today. Don't hang on to the previous definitions, because it's like it doesn't even matter. If you try to have the discussion with them that 2 years ago you said this word meant X, Y, B, and Z, it doesn't matter to them anymore. They are completely okay with contradicting themselves. And so we need to look at it on today's standards. But I wanted to make that note because it sounds like this is the path we're going to go down. And we just need to keep that in mind as we're watching it.
It says he's not Southern, he's hillbilly. So it's pronounced Ricky Lee Allen. And he talks about, at best, as a white male, you can be, anti-racist, white racist. Meaning I personally, I'm disgusted and will fight personally against this. But at the same time, I benefit as a white person in a white supremacist society. Something I don't want, but I still bequeath benefit.
So you can tell that she is a student of D'Angelo, because she just said that white men, and I'm sure she means this of white women as well, white men are racist. Even if they're anti-racist, they still benefit from a racist system. And so inherently, they are a white racist. Puppet Perception says, hang on, I'll show it on the screen. They can only evolve their language if they can speak about people as colors. They have to name it as a color. They don't have to name it as a color. They do name other things. I mean, they call people oppressors, oppressed, things like that. But generally speaking, yeah, like everything that is evil is white. But today, what that means is it's more about the system. It's kind of like, think about, okay, here's what I think happened. I think that this idea, this strategy, this woke ideology that's been around for a really long time, it's been around for decades. It wasn't just invented in the past couple of years. What their ultimate goal is to destabilize the system, right? But in 2019, it was more beneficial for them to talk about skin color as a way to destabilize the system. In 2022, usually they're going to be talking more about capitalism. I wonder if we're going to hear about capitalism in this lecture. In almost every new critical race theory or whiteness lecture that we watch, we do hear them talk about capitalism. That'll be something to listen out for. Are they going to attack our capitalist system in this lecture? And yes, she did just appropriate hillbilly dialect. She did.
I don't know. I'm trying to think of an equivalent, because I know that's hard. That's kind of hard to soak in, right? So I think of like, okay, do I have any Catholics in the room? Can I just go here? You're all sinners. It doesn't matter if you had premarital sex or you had a child out of wedlock. You're all sinners.
All white people are sinners, just like all Catholics are sinners. Oh no, oh no. That might have to get clipped. I always say I'm going to make clips and then I never do, but I write down timestamps and things. Okay, so 9:54. Sinners.
Anyway, you know what I'm saying, because by virtue of that overarching ideology. So I am trying to relate it so we can kind of see it in different lights. So yeah, George Yancey, a professor who has a book called Black Bodies, White Gaze, has that New York. You can literally Google George Yancey, Dear White America, New York Times, or you can look up some of Ricky Lee Allen's work. He's at University of New Mexico, or you can actually go back to church and no, I'm kidding. Feel like a sinner. No, I'm kidding. Give me some more things. What do you know about race and racism?
It's an embodied experience for some of us and an intellectual.
Bodies, bingo buzzword.
Give me more, guys. Ladies and gents.
For white people, it is invisible and normalized. So when white people are confronted with it, it's very uncomfortable.
Sin says this is her first bingo card without bodies. Oh no! Emphasize says, since orange is the new black and black men are the new white supremes, does that mean that white women are oppressed by black men? No, I still think in the woke hierarchy that black men are going to be more oppressed than white women. They hate white women right now. There was an article, I covered it on my other channel. I think it was on Effed Up News last week, where there was an article that came out about how white women are the new extremists. So no, the woke do not like white women. And the reason they don't like white women is because white women are pretty pissed off at the Democrats for what they're trying to do in the schools. And so white women are starting to vote more Republican purely because of the schools. And so they're calling white women extremists now because they're not voting the way they want them to vote. So no, I do not think that white women would overrule black men at this point, unless those black men are like Larry Elder or Thomas Sowell or any other prominent black male or frankly female figure that speaks out against this stuff. And then if a black man or any black person, really, man, woman, non-binary, whatever, like if any black person speaks out against this stuff, they're going to be called a white supremacist, or they're going to say they're trying to align themselves with whiteness or things like that. Those people will be persona non grata. But if it's like just an average black person, one that doesn't express an opinion or is overtly on their side, then they're still gonna be more oppressed than white women for sure. Judy's getting good on bingo. She's got whiteness and bodies already. I'm telling you, these older lectures are really good for bingo. They've had to get more careful. They've had to start reining it in. That's why fat studies is so interesting to watch.
Well, y'all are in this class. I know you know something.
It creates historical trauma that generations have to carry.
Especially within talking about it being a made-up construct and being invisible and normalized for whites, but really in terms of everything, how race is and everything about what makes up race, especially what is culturally superior and inferior, is absolutely from the perspective of this white normalized culture and construct.
White normalized culture and construct.
Or phrase it that way too, that's much more.
Yeah. And it's really, because I said this even yesterday, if you ask a neo-Nazi, they actually don't think they're racist.
No, that's not true.
Whites are just superior.
No. As someone who has more experience than she would like with actual neo-Nazis, that is overtly not true. That is overtly not true. They know exactly who they are. Nick H says, should have a class on series of videos showing how words evolve with the left to show people how to navigate and potentially predict new definitions. That's a really good idea, Nick. You know, I've often thought, and I don't know exactly how to do this. I've often thought there should be a tool to kind of measure what words are trending in the media. So if you look at like your typical woke publications like the New York Times or the Washington Post or things like that, what I want is an easy way to track the trends of different words and how they're showing up and how they're being used in the context of language. I just don't know how to do it. So if you have any ideas, you can come and join the Unwoke Army. The real Unwoke Army, not the fake make-believe copycat Unwoke Army that several people are trying to start, attempting to start. But you can like if we can figure this out, like I this is something I have actually thought about. Like, is there a way to track the definitions, to track the words, all that stuff? We can talk about that in locals, away from the prying eyes of the internet.
Just kind of so we're talking about something that has gotten to a point where it's so confusing that we're not sure exactly what it's now meaning, right? Because even the people we would think are blatant racists make whole arguments that they are not, you know? I mean, there's nothing more scary than being called a racist in front of other people, right? Like people would
That's
be like,
exactly
"I'd
why
rather be
they do
shot,
it.
man.
That's
Don't call me
exactly
especially in front of people of color, you know?"
that is exactly why they use this tactic. So for those of you who are in my locals, last night I read the introduction to my book, and I talk about how the history of the woke left using racism as an insult in order to gain more power. They have literally done it in every single presidential election to every single Republican candidate for the last 40 effing years. And she just outlined specifically why the woke left use racist as their primary attack against their opponents, because every single person is afraid of being. I was on the phone with a state rep right before this in New Hampshire, and he was telling me, so he's talking about an upcoming election, and he was like, well, they're going to call me a racist. How does my family deal with that? And this is an experienced politician. This is not someone who's new to this game. He understands what's going on. And, you know, so we were talking about like what happens when when they pull this out as an insult, because they're going to, and you just need to accept that they're going to. The minute that you get yourself to a place where you can not be bothered by being called a racist, that is actually priority number one when you're fighting back against the woke. You do not want to be bothered in any way by the term racist. And I know that's really difficult because it is one of the worst things that you can be called. But you have to know when they're calling you that, they're using it, they're calling you that name in order to gain power over you. And they will not be able to gain power over you unless you consent to it. If someone calls you a racist, the answer is no, I'm not. I'm not a racist. I disagree. You do not have to buy into their premise. You do not have to play their game. You do not have to accept it at all. You don't have to be defensive. Oh, why are you calling me a racist? How dare you call me? No. The answer is just no. Sorry. I disagree with you. I'm not a racist. Can we move on to actually talking about the issues now? You know, you do not have to accept the terms they're trying to force you to play by.
So yeah, so there's a lot of stigma tied to that word, right? That's why when someone said here, you know, what default, I'm like, oh, before I lose half the audience, let's think about it as you're all sinners. No, I'm kidding. So give me some more.
By the way, just so you guys know, because I've done this, I totally do this sometimes when I've had to do like facilitate like all day workshops. This is a tactic that people use when they don't have enough material to fill up the time. I've absolutely done this before where I'm like, I don't say this out loud to the group. I'm like, I don't have enough material to fill up this time, so let's do a brainstorm. Guys, what else do you have for the brainstorm? What else do you have? And I'm not going to say it's always counterproductive. It's not. It usually can actually be pretty good. You can use it to your benefit. But what she's doing right now is she's killing time. I mark my words. I can identify what's going on. Emphasize says, by their rules, that makes you an exism. So what? So what? And M169, we need to shift being called a P word as the worst possible thing to be or called. You know, I don't agree with that. Now, that's not to say that I don't think that it should be something that is really bad to be called, but what I would be concerned about with that strategy is that that term then gets like the term racist is thrown around like it means nothing. The term Nazi is thrown around like it means nothing. It has no meaning because the woke left has overused it. So if you want the P word to have actual meaning, you don't want to overuse it. So you just need to think, you need to be careful about this because I absolutely believe, based on what I see coming up and conversations on the right now, I think that this could be a word that could be extremely easily overused. That's not to say that some people don't deserve it, but it's one of those things where you do not want this word to lose its actual meaning. You don't want this word to lose its actual impact, right? Like when we're talking about the term racist, we want that term to have, like, okay, in my ideal world, the term racist would have actual meaning because it would refer to actual racism. But right now, if actual racism occurs, and I've actually experienced this, when I was talking about the actual white identitarians, the actual white nationalists, part of the problem was the term racist was thrown around so much that it just meant nothing. People like, Carlin, you're just making it up. Well, no, I wasn't making it up. There's actually a really legitimate problem, but we can't talk about it because the term racist has become meaningless, right? So you guys get where I'm going. Chief Executive says, I'm just reading the super chat, YouTube. Biden is illegitimate election fraud. I can't comment on that, dude. I can't. I'm just reading your super chat because I'm grateful that you supported the channel. I am not condoning. I don't think Joe Biden got 81 million votes, but we can't talk about that on YouTube. All right, let's keep going.
To humanize all. I like how you say that, Professor, because you're saying it doesn't only dehumanize people of color. And I think this is where people are lost because there's always this question. I always get this
all
question
good.
after.
It's all good.
What's the role of white people? Well, this is screwing you up too, you know? And people always say, well, how is it screwing me up? Because I benefit. Well, we'll talk a little bit more of how much it is going to impact some of the decisions, behaviors, even the down to the very emotions that we engage in. And now you can like sit, for example, how many, I know talking about race is already discomforting, right? How many white folks are, afraid about talking about race with folks of color? Be honest. Yeah, you see that? Or how about this? How many white folks are just afraid of talking about race? Period. Yeah, that's a common thing. And if I'm a social scientist, so I look at patterns, right? This is a common phenomenon throughout the world. So there's a socializing process. There's a psychosocial process for which makes this happen. And therefore, it actually engages in dehumanization. In one chapter in my book, I call it sadomasochism. And I think it's a really interesting chapter in my first book to talk a little bit about how it literally hurts your own self.
She talks about sadomasochism in her first book. I mean, sadomasochism literally does hurt you. Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert, when you like having pain inflicted on you, it does actually hurt you. Chief Executive, thank you for that super chat. Guys, please remember to mount that like button. Of course, I appreciate every super chat that comes in. Thank you guys so much for supporting the channel. I appreciate it. Remember, you can always become a member on my locals, and that supports the work I do as well. But minimally, please mount that like button. And if you are not subscribed already, We do this every Friday on Actively Unwoke, and I'm going to be posting more video content on Actively Unwoke too, so please make sure you're subscribed to the channel.
While you're hurting others as well, you know? Other aspects, yes, ma'am.
It's a unique experience, like just because you're a woman, just because you're a member of the marginalized community doesn't necessarily just
50 Shades of Racism. Well done.
You know, I think this is a hard task to say because I know, and especially in a moment, in a political and social moment where, you know, Me Too is happening and everything and all this, which is great. I'm not saying any of that is wrong. I'm saying it also inadvertently does something else. It also makes it seem as if just because you have a marginalized racial identity, that you have a right to testify, you know, which everyone has a right to testify, but there's more important aspects. You have to have a critical understanding.
Oh my God,
of how that
emphasize.
marginalized identity is being marginalized. So it's not enough to say yes.
Emphasize. Thank you for the super sticker. It's got, I know it doesn't show it on the screen. You guys can see it in the chat. It's got like a dog that's holding a trophy. Emphasize. Thank you for the support. I greatly appreciate it.
I'm a woman. Therefore, or yes, I am a person. Come on, join us. Whoa, 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 back, forth. Come on in. There's one chair there. Yeah, put your hands up if you have a chair next to you. Look up, there's some chairs. Look, don't let your knees do that to you. Trust me.
She hasn't even said anything of substance yet. You guys notice that? She hasn't really said anything of substance yet in this
there's
lecture.
There's a chair right there too. Anyone wants to take it? And there's one right here too, right in the very front. And then there's this. I don't know. It's just standing. You could like hook me up with some backup here. It's like gospel choir. So yeah, so we're talking about all these things. So I push back on that when people say, you know, don't get me wrong, critical race theory, and having studied critical race theory at UCLA with one of the leading scholars, Danny Solorzano, don't get me wrong, experiential knowledge is.
You guys are rocking the super chats today. I really do appreciate it, guys. M169 says, I should have worded that as returning to the meaning of racism to the same level of being a pedo. It is a social outcast. On that, I agree. And I think the way that we should be treating the woke is, quite frankly, with righteous indignation. Part of the inspiration for the book that I wrote is frankly Andrew Breitbart. I was deeply inspired by Andrew Breitbart's book, Righteous Indignation. We should absolutely, you know what? We should read Righteous Indignation for book club sometime in my locals. If you have not read Righteous Indignation, like, man, I wish Andrew Breitbart was still alive. There was no prouder moment for me than when I was called a hero on Breitbart for exposing the Washington Post fact checker who emailed me trying to go after Chris Rufo. And the whole reason I basically, if you guys missed this, I did a video about it on my first channel, but basically I posted the emails from the Washington Post fact checker to me on Twitter, and Breitbart called me a hero because I treated the media with the righteous indignation with which they deserved. And that was exactly my goal. My goal was to do what Andrew Breitbart would have done. I'm trying to do what I think Andrew Breitbart would have done with Actively Unwoke. And I think that part of the way we do this is simply by treating these people with absolute righteous indignation. People think I get a little uppity sometimes. They think I get a little too aggressive, but it's because I'm trying to treat these people with the righteous indignation with which they deserve. And I think that is deeply warranted. And I think that not enough people are doing that. So I totally get what you're going for with that M169. And that's something that we should continue to figure out together, and something that we should work on together as an Unwoke army, which we'll be doing in my locals and no one else's.
Very important. But it doesn't mean that they have a critical understanding of why it is a marginalized experience. You know, they may know it's something wrong, but not everything is, you know.
Yeah, really
how does it
racist.
make
She's
it
using a
racialized
whiteboard.
Experience, you know.
Exactly.
So it's important to know that. Let me just be frank. Not all folks of color know what they're talking about. Okay.
Well, what about their lived
Not all skin
experiences?
folk, and this is for folks of color.
Skin
not all
folk are
skin
kinfolk.
That's right. Okay. So
that was the beginning of multiracial whiteness right there. What she says, not all skin folk are kinfolk. Not all people of color are created equal. Some people of color who disagree with her They don't consider them to be allies. They consider them to be white.
Think you're making this go a long way. So what is it then? So you know you're starting, and I'm pretty sure this list can go on. But you've got some language here. You're talking about normalization, dehumanization, marginality, normal. You're talking about invisibility. So you're starting to understand these mechanisms pretty well. So let me ask you then this. What do you want to know specifically about whiteness? Yeah. It's all good. No, go with 5. You okay.
Why is whiteness spirit?
Sure, Sing, go for it.
Why
Approved.
Come to this way back when.
Why is whiteness here?
Yeah.
Or maybe another way to look at that is how did whiteness become dominant or at least seen as dominant?
Well, that's because. But say become. Okay.
This SJW beer is really good. Shock. It does taste like a Mai Tai.
Once you have been shown the systems and structures that have enabled you to live your life in ignorance and privilege, you know what? How do you overcome? I guess the shame. The shame of it is the right word. In order to.
How do you overcome the shame of whiteness? I think is what I just heard.
And I think a precursor question to that is here, and if I'm right, let me know, white folks, if I got this on point. Why do I feel shameful?
You
That's a big
shouldn't
thing.
feel
Shame
shame
is
for
a
being
deep-rooted
white.
thing.
It's okay to be white.
So, especially for something you can't see, right? I said yesterday, people always like to say that they don't see race, but they're having all these visceral emotional reactions to it. You know, like I had one white male, and there's, like I said,
Wait,
it's
she
not
just
only white
said you
folks
don't
that
see
undergo-
race. She just said some people say you don't see race. What is the code word for that? To say you don't see race? What is the code word for that? That they don't like. What does it mean to say you don't see race? And then we're going to talk about why I think this is a bad word, but colorblind, bing, bing, bing. I wanted to give you guys a bingo word. If you have colorblind on your bingo card, yup, colorblindness, 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 colorblindness. So I do not like the word colorblind. In Actively Unwoke, I argue that we should be using the word color indifferent because using the word colorblind just sets them up for an easy win. No, we don't mean that you can't actually see people's skin color when we use it. What we mean is that we don't treat people differently. But it's very easy to twist the meaning of the word. So I don't think we should be using the term colorblind. I think we should be using the term color indifferent.
the emotionalities of whiteness can inhabit in folks of color as well. And I talked about that yesterday, how complicit people can be, right? Like I had one white guy saying, "I don't see race."
No, she didn't. That's a
Oh,
lie.
wow,
No,
yes, sir.
she didn't. There is,
and I've had another one.
there is absolutely no, that is a lie. There is no way in this universe. She gave a white fragility lecture at the University of Denver where some old white guy came in and started beating on the table saying, "I don't see color." That didn't happen. That's a lie. Sorry. Not sorry.
Kept crying. First she was flustered. She was like not angry, but more like crying. And then she came to my office hours and I'm like, what's up, sister? And she's like, I don't see race. I just don't. I was like, okay. She goes, I wasn't raised that way. I mean, for goodness sakes. And she said this, we have Obama, Oprah, and Kobe now. I was like, oh my God, you're cured. Thank goodness you can see some black folk in the room, right? Because as a brown,
I don't believe that happened. She's making this up. Do
like
not
I
believe
said, black
it.
don't crack and brown don't frown. So, see in all its glory. But you see what I'm saying? It's such an interesting thing. You don't, but when I say something like unicorn, how many of you have seen a unicorn? If you did, you gotta tell my kids. You know? No, but you're not. Are you banging your hand on the table? Are you all of a sudden crying?
Are you
No,
calling
that tells you there's something.
Are you calling someone a racist for not seeing a mythical being that only exists in storybooks? Are you This lady has already said that being called a racist is the worst possible thing that you can call someone. And now she's suddenly surprised that people get upset when you call them a racist for no reason other than the way they were born? No one's insulting you for not seeing a unicorn, dude.
Kind of psychosocial attachment to something regarding race. And we're gonna, by choosing to be blind, it's almost like we're bearing false witness. It makes us feel so shameful, right? Okay, give me more. Yeah.
Why is it hard for people to acknowledge, like white people to acknowledge white privilege or that there's
Why don't people just acknowledge they have privilege? Why can't they just acknowledge it? Why can't they just agree with us?
They have stateless, but their humanity is tied to the dehumanizing of others. I would add that maybe like make it very specific of like how do white people help other white people because brown and black wasn't there after generation. Yeah. So like how do white people like their family?
Yeah, what does like white folks' accountability to people of color look like?
And I want to add, what do we do with white people when they're irredeemable?
I couldn't hear that.
What do we do with white people when they're irredeemable? Once they've crossed that line and you don't want to ostracize them because you don't want them to go and sit.
What do we do with white people when they are irredeemable? How much do you want to bet this lady is not actually going to ask the appropriate qualifying question? Well, I mean, this whole conversation shouldn't be happening, so I shouldn't say that this is an appropriate qualifying question because it kind of acknowledges the validity of the whole conversation. But what makes a person irredeemable? These people literally believe that human beings are irredeemable. I don't believe, well, there are certainly extreme cases, and I don't want to get in trouble and misquoted in Newsweek again. But for the most part, I don't believe people are ever irredeemable. People can do really shitty things. People can do horrible things. People can do things that hurt you deeply. But that doesn't mean they're irredeemable. And I don't think we should ever be teaching anyone that someone is irredeemable based purely on the color of their skin, based purely on the fact that they refuse to buy into why you're calling them a racist. That's ridiculous.
Sit in their racism, but you also can't have them in spaces that are productive.
Okay. And when you say we, you're saying people of color, right? Yeah. So I'm sorry, I'm trying to sum up. I did say how whites get their cousins. You know that phrase, like the whole phrase, Becky, get your cousin, this kind of deal. So yeah, and then go ahead.
See if I can phrase this right. If people can't not see race, then how do we start seeing race?
If you can't not see race, then how do we start seeing race? How about we just don't treat people differently based on the color of their skin? Why can't we just not treat people differently based on their skin color?
and the long game. So
Man.
wanting to like call people out, hold people accountable in a way that gets to the urgency. Like I need you to like show up and like be here now, but at the same time, like I don't want to shut you down to where you're like, what am I going to hurt you?
Right, accent. Yeah, it's kind of interesting because that is kind of the culture we're at right now, right? Don't get me wrong. I understand where these supposed, I say supposed because I wouldn't categorize them as this, but they categorize themselves. It's kind of like self-labeling yourself as a woke ally. Well, these people like to label themselves as social justice warriors, and I wouldn't say that I would agree all the way that that's what a social justice warrior is. But you're seeing in this current climate so much shame tactics. It's no different than the bullying tactics that you're used to. It's like videotape, get her fired. You see that, Becky? Video, I don't know. There's so many. But barbecue, let me see your keys, don't touch my butt. When none of that really ever happened, you're seeing all this happen. And of course, don't get me wrong, it's right. It's right to call out injustice and wrongness, right? Especially with the one, you saw that viral video where the woman was screaming at the bodega, and it's like, your son, a little kid with his backpack, a little black boy. She's like yelling at the mom, your son touched my butt. No. It eerily reminds us of Emmett Till, right?
Just T asks, would you say she is a good speaker or a small fish in the Pacific Ocean? I wouldn't say she's an okay speaker. She's not the worst I've ever seen, but she's not like D'Angelo level. I mean, the fact that we haven't heard of her, probably because she's Asian, to be honest. Her being Asian probably doesn't work in her favor like she thought it would, because Asians in the woke hierarchy are not really considered like oppressed. So that's probably why she hasn't broken through or anything. You guys are killing it at bingo today. Bingo's having a good day.
And they show the footage of the bodega, and the little boy's backpack touched her when he turned around. Like, but we're so quick to demonize blacks. This anti-blackness is so prevalent. It's like, just give me something. Like, the wind is too strong. Blame it on Obama. I don't know.
Really? Okay.
I'm having a bad day. It's some black person's fault. You know what I mean? So it's like that quick judgment to blame blacks is always prevalent, right? So I think when we're talking about those social justice warriors, we're also thinking about, I'm an educator. I believe that education can be transformative, and we need to find healthy ways of communicating the most difficult of topics. And if someone who believes in racially just education, wants to teach more racially harmonious ways of engaging with race, then I should believe that I can even teach the most racist of the students, correct? So even if I got so-and-so fired by getting my phone out and videotaping, does that do anything for that person who engaged in a racial microaggression to critically reflect on her own actions?
Ding, 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 buzzword.
No, oftentimes they're going to be more entrenched in whiteness and now wrongly presume that they're actually the victims of reverse racism.
Reverse racism isn't a real thing. It's just racism. There's no such thing as reverse racism. It's all just racism.
How we engage in, as social justice warriors, right? We don't want to engage in the same tactics that has...
She literally just called herself a social justice warrior. Holy shit. This is a lecture at the University of Denver. How do we engage as social justice warriors? Let's listen to that again.
Even teach the most racist of the students, correct?
Time is at
so
26.
Even if I got so-and-so fired by getting my phone out and videotaping, does that do anything for that person who engaged in a racial microaggression to critically reflect on her own actions? No, oftentimes they're going to be more entrenched in whiteness and now wrongly presume that they're actually the victims of reverse racism. You see what I'm saying? So we got to be really thoughtful about how we engage in as social justice warriors, right? We don't want to engage in the same tactics that has so discriminated against us, or as Audre Lorde said, we can't dismantle the house with the master's tools, right? We can't point it out, but it depends on how far you want to go with that, right? Yes, ma'am.
Another question I have is, how can you talk about whiteness and that's so kind of centering this? Like I'm just kind of sick of the conversation about whiteness, is that for white people and they need to, it's not about them. It is about them, it's not about them, right?
Right.
Patrice, this is a really good point. Is she saying don't overbully them? That's exactly what she's saying. You have to have the appropriate level of bullying. If you go too far, you're just going to turn them off forever and they're never going to listen to you. But if you only bully them a little bit, you can do it in a way that tricks them to being more receptive to future bullying. This is actually, so fun fact. Okay, so for those of you who don't know, so my doctoral dissertation was about workplace bullying. So I've studied a lot of bullying. And how bullying tends to work in workplaces is that it starts with really small things. It's the instance of like, if you throw a frog in a pot of boiling water, frog's going to jump right out, right? But if you put a frog in a pot of lukewarm water and slowly bring the water to a boil, that frog's going to sit in that water until it boils because it's gradual. So how bullying works in the workplace is it starts off with small things, little things. People don't really even know what's going on. Most of the time, one of the problems with trying to fix workplace bullying is that most of the time people don't even know they're being bullied because it's like a subtle thing happens and then another subtle thing happens, then another thing happens, then it maybe escalates a little bit and then another subtle thing happens, escalates a little bit more. And this can go on for months or years. And so by the time someone actually reports bullying to HR, which by the way, you should never do. If you are being bullied in the workplace, do not go to HR. HR will almost always turn on you. 80% of the time, you're going to get retribution for reporting the bullying. Don't do that. Just quit the job. It's the easiest way to get out of it. But by the time someone actually goes to HR to report the bullying, it's gotten to an extreme level, and that person might not even be able to recount all the instances of bullying because it started small and it just kept escalating and escalating and escalating and escalating and escalating. Yeah, Just T, I have a whole chapter about bullies and narcissists in Zen Your Work. The editor wanted me to take that out. I was like, no. I think it's called Working with Enemies. I think it's like chapter 9 or something. Yeah, so it's the same thing here. What she's talking about is like, don't go right to the most aggressive level of bullying, just do the little stuff. And that way you can still keep them on the hook and they don't even know what's happening. It's kind of like indoctrinating someone into a cult, right? Or it's like slowly, like it's an abusive relationship. I'm just gonna say it. It is an abusive relationship. Naruto says, did you look at that insane poll of Democratic voters? 45% of them support internment camps for people who don't want the vaccine. I heard about this poll. I haven't looked at it yet. Maybe we can cover it on Effed Up News this week. Maybe we can do that. That's right, Twin Tails. HR is only trying to protect the interests of the company. That is absolutely correct. We seriously need to point out their bullying ways. I've just recently taken to calling people bullies. If someone is acting like a bully, I'm kind of at the point where I'm like, I don't care anymore. We should just call them the bullies that they are. Why not?
How whiteness impacts other folks, right? So yes, ma'am.
Oh, it's Rasmussen? Okay. Thank you.
That's my focus of the topic too.
Naruto, if you want to post that in locals, I'll take a look at it. If it's no trouble, if it's a hassle, don't worry about it. I can look it up. But if you have it handy, I'm sure you probably messaged it to me too, which I appreciate.
Yeah, people always say like it's a numbers game. It's just, but that's not true because it's not just about numbers. It's about
okay, so I want to address something Catherine said in the chat. What about camps for SJWs? I don't think SJWs should be in camps. Listen, man, it is not illegal to have stupid ideas. I just think that SJWs should be so rejected by society that their ideas are just unpalatable to the masses. But there's nothing illegal about having dumb ideas, right? We can't become our enemies. No one should be in internment camps. Concentration camps are a bad idea all around. Even for we never want to become the monster that we're fighting. This is really important, guys, because to be quite frank, I've seen a lot of anti-woke people or anti-CRT people become the monsters they're fighting. Now, I am fully in favor, and I write about this in Actively Unwoke. I am fully in favor of using some of their tactics against them. I am absolutely in favor of that. However, we can never become the monsters that we're fighting, and we have to be extremely mindful of that because it's really easy when you're living in this environment all day, every day. It is extremely easy to become the monster that you're fighting. Now, I actually have one of the chapters in Actively Unwoke. It's basically a take on the rules for radicals. I did my own rules for the Actively Unwoke. I have, I think, 11 rules for the Actively Unwoke. And the very first rule is that you have to know your values. You have to know why you're fighting. You have to know what you're fighting for. Because without understanding your values and what you stand for, you risk becoming the monster that you're fighting. And we don't want that. So that is actually rule number 1. for the actively unwoke is we have to know our values because we don't want to become like them. If we became like them, that would be the worst possible scenario. Then we would all be like them. Then what kind of place would the world be? I don't want to live in that type of world. I don't think you want to live in that type of world either. But it's really easy and we have to constantly be mindful of it and we have to constantly be reevaluating and quite frankly keeping ourselves honest. I'm not exactly sure how to say this other than saying sometimes we need to call each other on our bullshit. And I don't mean call out culture like they use it. But I do think that we should look to each other and sometimes saying like, dude, you're going a little too far here. And I can go too far too. Listen, man, I got banned from school board meetings for yelling, "We know where you live." Now, I don't apologize for that and I'd do it again. I would absolutely do it again. But we want to be careful. But I also really questioned that. I was like, is this going too far? I was very self-reflective about this. I don't mind using extreme strategies when I think they make sense. But I also want to make sure we're always being self-reflective and we're being honest with ourselves about what we're doing because those dopamine hits are a serious drug that we never want to get addicted to. Naruto says you have a right to be wrong. Yes, you do. You have a right to be wrong. You have a right to believe stupid things. You have a right to believe offensive things. You even have a right to say offensive things. I do not want to limit this woman's ability to lecture in public. This woman has a right to believe and to say and to teach things that I deeply and personally find offensive. Because the First Amendment only matters when it is protecting the speech that we find most offensive. I just want to create a world in which no one is even interested in listening to this woman because they know she's a nut job that should not have any influence at all in any way.
Power, right? I'll give you two examples. You know, in the global, well, one just in the national context, that people always say, well, it's just because whites are the majority. That's not necessarily true. Because I'm from LA. So again, I'll preface all my things with, I'm sorry, I'm a LA girl. We talk a little, I guess in Coloradan speak, we talk a little bit harsh and direct, and sometimes some of our languages is not the most appropriate, but it's real when it gets to the point quicker, you know? So I'm gonna preface that. But we're talking a little bit more here, you know, like in California, whites were not the majority. In fact, when they didn't become the majority, and we used to use the words majority and minority all the time in California, but the minute that people of color became the majority, the statistical amount, numerical amount majority, all of a sudden government passed, we will no longer use the words majority and minority in any government document. I was like, wait, I'm ready to use that now. You know, it's kind of like this.
She doesn't have values.
I'm gonna say you're non-color. You know, it's this whole positioning, right? Which centers whiteness. Yet again, it's always become the litmus of how far, the standard deviations of how far we are from whiteness. Are you Asian American? You might be a little bit close. What kind of Asian American? Are you Southeast? Then you fall a little back, you know? So it's this relational construct, you know? So I don't believe in that. And then you're talking about global, like South America. You've got a population rich with black-skinned folks, but the racial minority of whites actually holds the racial power. So it's not just about a numbers game. It's about a historically rooted power game, right? And how infrastructures, as someone said, how these institutions have upheld them in such ways, right? So I got some of your questions. Dang, you were ready with the questions. So why don't we jump in and on it, you know, right now? So how many of you have heard of critical race theory? Raise your hand.
Oh, this is before the anti-CRT movement.
Critical race theory that, you know, that is made popular, right? Y'all know racial battle fatigue, right? I like to tell folks here the same story yesterday.
Look at that white lady.
It's like if you
She's like,
the kids language to
she's so bored.
Their experiences, no matter how young, they can actually use the terminologies. I was coming home from UC Denver, picking up they're now teenagers going on 30. But when they were young, when she was only, I think it was 6.
I'm sorry, is this law school? No, it's not. And this is 2019. This was pre the anti-CRT movement. This is not law school. It is at the University of Denver, but this is not law school. And they're teaching critical race theory. Oh, great call out, Reagan.
First, they were 6 or 7. So my daughter, I have older twins. She once said to me, "How was work today?" And I said, actually, I have battle fatigue. I actually meant gendered, but I didn't go there. And she turned around. She goes, "Mommy, did your coworkers exert whiteness today?" And I was like, "Yes, they did." But the point here,
She's teaching that to her children because, of course, she is. Did your coworkers exert whiteness today? What does that even mean? What does that mean? Did they express an opinion? Is expressing an opinion exerting whiteness? Is expressing an opinion she disagreed with exerting whiteness? Would it have been exerting whiteness if she had not expressed an opinion that she disagreed with? Or if a white person expresses an opinion that she agreed with, are they still exerting whiteness? What does that even mean? Naruto, I really appreciate it, my friend. Thank you. Yeah, I'm sure Jared, she probably is making it up. You're probably right.
here is if you actually give the vocabulary, those of you that are in education know this, you front load the terminologies, they'll be able to use them in when they experience them, instead of only evolving in a space where we say that's racist. And then it's almost like we have a speech impediment now because we don't even know how to articulate the racial aspect of what we believe or not believe was racist, right? So that's a gaslighting. Was that racist? You're not even sure of your own reality anymore, So we know some terminologies from critical race theory, that being racial battle fatigue, which comes from William Smith's work, who again is a brewer.
Lisa, thank you for the super chat. Lately, I've been watching The Hill. They don't like Trump, unfortunately, but they're against medical tyranny. There's still a chance to set political differences aside. BLM in New York protested mandates. Lisa, I love that you put this up. And I do think, one of the things that I've learned from being a part of the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire and the Mises Caucus in the Libertarian Party so one of the deals with the Mises Caucus and the Libertarians is they'll work with pretty much anyone on like single issues. So if you can find agreement with someone on the left on a single issue, even if you disagree with all other issues, they will work with those people. The Libertarians, dude, listen, I understand that the Libertarian Party looks like a shit show from the outside, and it is. But it has actually been fascinating for me to be involved and a part of the LPNH and watching how they work, which is so different than what I experienced with the Republicans and the conservatives. It's so different than what I experienced with the Democrats. So I think we should be looking for those issues that we can work on. I think we should be looking for those ways in which we align. And there are still those issues. And I think we always need to keep that in mind. Are we really polarized? Yes. Is there more division than ever? Yes, absolutely. However, we always need to be looking for ways to bridge the gap. I still think to this day, there is more overlap between the MAGA movement and Black Lives Matter than they realize. And I'm not talking about the organizers of Black Lives Matter. I'm talking about normal BLM activists, people in the real world. And I'm talking about normal MAGA Trump people in the real world. Those are both populist movements. There's probably a lot of overlap between those two. And I really wish that Trump people would distinguish between Antifa and like average Black Lives Matter supporters, because like they're conflating the two. And when you conflate the two, it makes it impossible to work with, because you can't work with Antifa. Antifa is effing crazy. But can you work with just normal Black Lives Matter organizers? Yeah, you can. You can. There was something called the Rainbow Coalition that happened in the 60s in Chicago. The Rainbow Coalition is fascinating because that was an alignment of the Black Panthers and the KKK. I think it was the Black Panthers. I could be wrong about that. Fred Hampton, like I'm gonna say it's like Black Panthers for the purposes here, because I don't recall if it's that specifically, but it's like that kind of idea. And the KKK, they came together, they aligned to work together, and this scared the establishment so much that they had Fred Hampton assassinated. Look up the Rainbow Coalition. Honestly, it's fascinating. This has happened before. And the establishment, and I mean, another example is like, look at Occupy Wall Street. Occupy Wall Street was a populist movement, and in response to Occupy Wall Street, what happened? The mainstream media started turning out article after article about racism. Racism wasn't a thing until the New York Times made it a thing. And that was a backlash to Occupy Wall Street, because Occupy Wall Street was a populist movement. There's always alignment to be had. And I continue to believe that we shouldn't look at people as our enemies. And I know that might seem contradictory to some of the things that I say. And you know what? You have to be bombastic. You have to say things sometimes in overt terms. But as just a human being, we need to be looking for ways that we align with people and things we can agree on.
I'm just gonna, shed some love for any. Do I have any folks from Los Angeles here? Ooh, that's right. Anyone from Cali? I don't know why I said Cali. We never call ourselves that, but I just go ahead and do that. I know I got used to hearing everyone always says, "Oh, you're from Cali," so I use it now. So we're using those words. What's another terminology you hear from critical race theory? Someone said experiential knowledge.
Lived experiences. That's not from critical race theory. That's been around a long effing time.
Discourses of power. You're knowing that some of these kind of talks have different power elements. Interest convergence, which come from Derek Bell, a Harvard professor, right? One of the founders of critical race theory that stems, we know, from legal scholarship, right? Critical legal theory, actually. So yes, we're using interest convergence, where things only happen if it also benefits whites, right? So that's that whole notion of interest convergence.
Things only happen if it benefits whites. Okay.
What else? Colorblind racism, which actually comes from sociology in Eduardo Bonilla Silva's work, right? And he talks about, he goes, well, how do we have racism when no one says they're racist, right? So he talks about the different elements, semantic discourse, routines that commonly are
Sin knows.
When someone
Sin knows what I'm talking about. Of course she does. Black Panthers, Young Patriots Organization, and the Young Lords. Yeah. It was a populist coalition of people who didn't agree, but they figured it out. And they had things they worked together on, and the establishment did not like them at all. Thank you, Sin.
Racism, one being like an incoherent rhetoric, right? All of a sudden when someone talks about race, they get like, what happened? It becomes almost so hard to have a conversation that they become incoherent, right? So there's these features of colorblind racism. Has anyone heard the word or the term racial microaggression? Okay, tell me what racial microaggression is. Oh, come on, don't be shy. Yeah, go ahead. Can you see that a little louder? Because I don't think LJ got that in the back. He said no. Hold on, say that again.
Well, like microaggressions in general are behaviors that you engage in that you're not even meaning to do necessarily. Like they're more ingrained in kind of the way you've been brought up and the things you've learned. So racial microaggressions would have to do with sort of what you've been taught racially or how to kind of understand race.
Great. So he's talking about we know kind of blatant racism, right? I'm pretty sure we've gone through enough US history to know, dude, that is really racist. But the racial microaggressions I'm sorry, what was your name? What Kyle was talking about is sometimes it's so ingrained in our head, we're not even understanding how it can have racial implications. In fact, I'm going to skip a couple of slides here because I'm going with our flow. How do you move the mouse? I can't see the mouse anymore. I'm just going to go like this. Don't look, close your eyes. Okay.
Bad slides.
Oh,
Bad slides,
oh,
lady.
wow, look at that. Folks, be prepared at DU.
All right. So I'm about to finish my first beer. You can see I have a very pulpy glass, but we're going to roll with it. That's okay. Guys, if you are enjoying Happy Hour, I do this every week on Actively Unwoke at 5 o'clock. I also stream every single week on my main channel, which is just Carlin Borisenko. You can find it, I think, in the description. I stream on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday on my main channel, but we come over here for happy hours on Fridays. If you are enjoying what you're watching, please mount that like button. Please consider subscribing to the channel. But I need that new beer, and I'm thinking that that raspberry, excuse me, that raspberry lime Ricky might be calling my name. What do you guys think? I think it's time to finish up my first beer and go for raspberry lime Ricky. That was a really good beer, though. Sours sometimes are so surprisingly good. Sometimes sours are really bad. It's like drinking pickle juice. But that sour was really good. That Mai Tai, see, don't judge a beer based on the fact that it has a person wearing a pussy hat on the can. We don't want to judge the beer based on that. Patrice says raspberries are, I agree, raspberries are a superior fruit. I love raspberries, especially Victor and I have a place that we can go pick raspberries, like not that far away. Obviously not now, it's the winter. I love fresh organic raspberries. There's nothing better. The place we go pick raspberries at, they also have golden raspberries, which are really good. They have blueberries too, Sin. Gotta get Maine blueberries though. All right. Here's our raspberry lime Ricky. Oh, it's so pretty. It's pink. I'm a fan of a pink beer. I am. All right, this is Branch Blade Brewing Company. Their Raspberry Lime Ricky. It is a popsicle ale. Looks like a popsicle ale, doesn't it? It's going to have a little orange infusion today from the first beer. Another dangerous beer. This is really good. This tastes like a raspberry. Good selection going on today for happy hour. All right, guys, let's keep going.
We got budget cuts in the state, you know. So here, did I do this right? How do I do it? Does it magically appear? This one? No, this one? Okay, I'll give it to you. So we have here one of the definitions, and critical race theory draws a lot from counseling. Anyone from counseling? Social work, and then the related MFT? Good. So we're talking about racial microaggressions, and as Kyle said, are these brief and commonplace daily verbal, non-behavioral or environmental indignities, whether intentional or unintentional, that communicate hostile, derogatory, and negative racial slights and insults people of color. You know, I get, like I said to yesterday, you know, I get the where are you from? I'm from LA, and then they ask me where are you. Yeah, I see y'all.
No,
know
they
the
don't.
script.
No,
That's what I'm
they
saying.
don't.
Whiteness, we act like it's unknown, but we know it. We know it.
No one asked that, or very few people asked that. And I doubt she's ever actually been asked that, because it's not like she has an accent or anything. She is literally teaching people that racism exists where it doesn't. I don't believe she's ever been asked that. I'm sorry. She sounds like she's from America. Jesus Christ. And, you know, I mean, why is there anything wrong with asking people where they're from, too? My husband has a very thick accent. It is obvious that he did not grow up here. Like, is there anything wrong with asking my husband where he's from, or is that a microaggression against freaking Ukrainians? Naruto says, random fact of the week, 35% of the people hung by the Klan were white people who supported the civil rights movement. That's fascinating, Naruto. I had no idea about that. Huh. All right. And the fact that the students in the class just repeated the lie, Like, it's like they're all probably convinced that something happens frequently that I do not believe there is evidence to show that it happens frequently. I actually did a deep dive into the research on microaggressions like a long time ago, like almost 2 years ago. And what I found when I was looking at the research on microaggressions is the only person who thought that microaggressions were a real thing was the person that invented them, Daryl Wing Su. He's a teacher at Columbia. He has written extensively about how microaggressions are a real thing. By pure coincidence, he also invented microaggressions and makes a boat ton of money consulting or the organizations to help them reduce their microaggressions. But every other piece of research that I read on microaggressions basically said there's no way to prove they're a real thing. They don't show up consistently. They don't impact people consistently. There is no way to prove that they are real. So the only person who seems to think that they're real is the person that's making a boat ton of money consulting on them. And I wonder if he has a vested interest in perpetuating these lies.
Because the minute I tell them I'm from Kaiser Permanente, Sunset Boulevard, maternity ward, they're looking at me like, you know? And so, sometimes I can point out whiteness in various ways. I could say, oh, were you asking about my ethnicity? Because I obviously have phenotypes that differ from white people. They're like, whoa, did she just say white? How racist is she? You got to be, yes, I'm noticing all your fabulousness, white skin, Or I could just play along with it. I was like, so where are you
Oh,
from?
Murphy's
Ohio.
Pool. Thanks for the super
Great.
chat. We're drinking a
Wonderful.
raspberry
No, I
lime
meant,
murky
where are you
sour
really
beer.
from? Like
Cheers, my
Ireland?
friend. Thanks for the
Like,
super
how do you
chat.
speak English so well? I thought it was Gaelic out there, So, but you see what I'm talking about? There's a natural course that you talked about, that normal. It's as we don't even think about it. It's like a lion eats a gazelle, right? So when we kind of showcase it or make it visible, all of a sudden it's kind of like, that sounded weird. Why did she ask me how do I speak English so well? I'm white skinned. Of course I can. Well, my aunt's Russian. She's a Russian Jew. She even says to this day, I can't speak English. I'm not going to speak. I'm like, okay, well, that's going to be really hard in LA, Auntie. But we know this to be something, right? And I want to point out that it's not about intentionality, although intentionality can make it worse, right? Or not, or whatever. But so many people do this. Like when someone says, man, come up to someone, that was racist because they didn't take my class. Or if they're a little nuanced, they're like, that was so racially microaggressive, whatever.
No
the
one
case may
says
be, if
that.
someone's actually coming to you to say, hey, I didn't feel that phrase or what you said wasn't kosher with me, Instead of actually fixating on why it wasn't, people get so defensive and they start, well, that's not my intent. I don't care about your intent, girl. In fact, isn't it strange that in the law, right, if you commit murder, regardless of intent, the intent is only included in the sentencing and the severity of punishment, right? You can be convicted of murder without intent, manslaughter. Do I have any law students in here? Yeah, am I right? Right? You don't have to have intent in there. That is later. But for something like racism, see, this is how we're talking about institutions that maintain it, right? But with regards to racial discrimination suits, right? You have to prove intent. Am I not right? Exactly. So all someone has to do is they could be racist and say, well, that wasn't my intent. It's really nice that your people can make it to this college, but it's not my intent to be racist. Therefore, absolved, healed, right? So you're seeing how these institutions can engage. So it's not so much about intent. So I want to be very clear about that because so many people focus on that. So we know about racial microaggressions, right? We know that it leads to racial oppression. What we're not really understanding is the X factor, which is that of whiteness, right? Whiteness. In fact, in education alone, anyone in teacher education, I got one. No teachers in the class? I can't convince you? We need you. In fact, Christine Slater, one of the biggest scholars of white and race and multicultural ed and teacher education, has argued in 2001 that there is an overwhelming presence of whiteness in teacher education. So you guys know the stats. According to the National Council of Educational Statistics, 86% of K-12 teachers in the United States are white. That was in 2012. In 2016, about 84 now percent of teachers.
Yes,
US
Judy,
K-12
yes.
teachers are white, right? So there's this not only white people, she's talking about the ideologies of whiteness that is brought in by white people. There's an
Update. Sorry, I was just texting with Joshua. Joshua is fine. He's coming along. Joshua is still with us. That's the important information. Everyone send loving energy to Joshua. He's still alive.
overwhelming, but she makes the argument it's not only the K-12 teachers, it's teacher education. In fact, I'm a teacher educator, and most of my colleagues are white. In fact, I'll have a white colleague.
Wait. Sorry. Oh God, I didn't mean to cough it in the mic. COVID cough. She's a teacher educator. Excuse me? What? She's a teacher educator? But critical race theory definitely isn't taught in K through 12 schools. It's just this lady who happens to be a teacher educator and apparently thinks all teachers are racist because they're white. But critical race theory is definitely not taught in K through 12 schools. It's just taught to teachers by teacher educators, and then they don't think it's going to make its way into schools. Are you kidding me? George Andre Veloso Nunez says, what about self-defense? They killed with a valid intent. SC from before. Expressing an opinion's whiteness because you can only repeat the party line. Yeah, I mean, oh, excuse me. I think my beer went down the wrong tube. Hang on. Yeah, I mean, listen, this whole argument. So what they say is that your intent doesn't matter, only the impact. But the problem is that most of the time, the feelings that we have in our head aren't based on other people's actions. They're based on our own perspectives and how we perceive the world. So two different people, if someone sends out an email at work, I used to see this happen all the time in workplaces when people still worked in like locations, and I know people are starting to get back to the office. But what would happen is someone would be late to a meeting and they would send an email saying, I'm going to be 5 minutes late to a meeting. So one person would get that email that says, I'm going to be 5 minutes late. And they're like, okay, well, no big deal. They're going to be 5 minutes late. It's fine. Another person would get that exact same email and they would say, why didn't this person put a smiley face in the email? They were obviously being defensive and aggressive, and I don't know why they're sending aggressive emails when they're going to be late. So two different people can take a stimulus and interpret it in different ways. That's because most often when we're interpreting things, it is based on our mood and our perspective. God, my throat is like going. And so when these people are saying that your intent, God dang it, what is going on? Hang on. I'm just going to take a second. I apologize. Hang on. I feel like I've got something important to say. I just can't get it out. My throat is not cooperating. Means I need more beer. So the point I'm trying to make is how people interpret information has to do more with their mood and their perspective than it does with what the person says. And so when we're advancing this ideology that intent matters more than impact, you are very literally putting yourselves at the mercy of other people's moods. If someone is in a shitty mood, they are much more likely to take offense to something you say. If someone is in a great mood, what you say, it doesn't matter how offensive it is, can never bother them. Because how our feelings are ours. Our feelings are no one's responsibility but our own. They want to get rid of that. And the reason they want to get rid of that is that puts you at their mercy constantly. All they have to do is say, you offended me. Well, what does that even mean? Right? And yeah, guys, don't go on Twitter. I see you talking about Twitter in the chat. Twitter is a cesspool of humanity. Twitter is awful. Don't go on Twitter. Get on Gitter. Follow me on Gitter if you're on Gitter. I'm on Gitter at just my first name, Karlyn. Gitter is so much nicer.
Say, I'm an expert on Black diaspora and education. I'm like, okay, all right, sister. Then the next white woman's like, I'm an expert in bilingual education of Latinx cultures. I'm like, all right, cool, okay, good. And then then I just say, well, I'm an expert on white people thinking they're helping folks of color, And for some reason, they're like, on that one, right? So it's very important. And I talked about this yesterday. Well, then what is whiteness? Because people are using the words white privilege.
Define
and
it.
all of these things in the same thing. It's not the same thing. So whiteness, if we talk about blackness as a social construction, which leads to real consequences, that's the difference, right? It's not just in our minds. Our minds produces real consequences like that of anti-miscegenation laws and the belief that whites are pure, right? That's what led to that. So we're talking about these social constructions, and if they impact language, experiences,
look how young they are,
epistemologies, then whiteness is also a social construction of white normalizations, meaning emotions, ideologies, behaviors, like the whole
I was wrong.
Some of our hair, right? Like it becomes so normal.
Wait, she's saying that the need to touch people's hair is a component of whiteness? So I was wrong when I said earlier, it does sound like she's saying that whiteness doesn't actually have to do with the color of your skin. It just has to do with how you're socialized in society. Where the hell's my mouse? There it is. Bye, Progressive Rising. Have a good one.
It's okay to touch my hair. Or I get this a lot. It's the strangest thing. I get like white women who feel that they can always touch me. They're always like, hey, sister. Hey, sister. I'm like, whoa, hold up. Anyone that gets, or I had one who likes to talk really close, I'm like, if you step at someone
that's
like
a woman
that from
thing.
the hood, you're going to get punched. Or
that's not a race thing. That's a woman thing. When I was at that school board meeting and I had that lady come and get right up in my face and yell at me, and then I stood up and and there was a hush that came over the crowd because they thought I was going to hit her. Like, she got right up in my face. She wasn't a white lady. That's a woman thing. That's a woman trying to exert power over another woman. That's what that is. It's not a whiteness thing. That's a female thing.
You're going to get kissed. You went in 90. I'll give you 10. Right? So you're talking about these types of behaviors, but the difference is, this is where people leave it short. They're just thinking, oh, it's just about bringing different perspectives to the table, not realizing there's a power structure that makes one perspective more dominant. So you're talking here, but the difference is, unlike blackness, whiteness is normalized because white supremacy elevates whites and whiteness to the apex of the racial hierarchy. That's the difference there. So it's not about only white norms and cultures and behaviors. Like we know, the crying always happens when we talk about race. We know.
Is anyone crying?
Men, it's the pounding, right? Or
total
disengagement, or what.
So let me ask this, because we've heard a lot about white fragility in these presentations, and she's saying white people always cry when we talk about race. Have we ever watched a presentation on Happy Hour where a white person has actually cried? I have been doing happy hours for like a year. Almost every single week. Not every one. Sometimes I had to skip. But have we in the history of happy hour ever seen a white person whine or cry or complain during happy hour? Because I hear all these anti-racist trainers all the time saying white people they can't help themselves. They get emotional anytime you mention race. We have yet to see any single training that I can recall. Maybe you guys will be able to recall differently. I do not recollect a single training that we have ever watched on happy hour where any white person cried because they were talking about race. It's never happened. So I no longer believe this is true because we've tried. Maybe we need to go back and maybe we need to go back and watch some older trainings. Because there's trainings on YouTube from like 10 years ago. Maybe we should go back in the archives next week. We'll watch a really old training. See if people cry during that. I usually try to get like newer trainings. I really like the most recent ones because that gives us the most recent sense of what's going on. But maybe next week we'll go back into the archives and we'll watch like a 10 or 12-year-old training. Because like, you know, let's see if there was ever a time in which white people were just bawling uncontrollably in these trainings. I don't know. Emphasize says, wouldn't what she just said be sexist and assault? I'll kiss you, you come 90%, I'll give you 10. I mean, it was a little sexist, to be honest, but apparently she thinks all men can be sexist. I wonder, I mean, like if she is making a stereotype of all women and saying all women do a certain thing, that kind of seems a little bit sexist to me. I mean, how is that different from saying all black people do a certain thing or all Asian people do a certain thing? So it does seem a little bit sexist.
All the deer in headlights look. Which I have a piece called Frozen Tundra. You know, the emotionally frozen state of whiteness, where it's just like they talk about racism, like, you know, like, so all of those. But we're talking about how those, even down to one's emotions, becomes a way to operationalize white supremacy. It's a way to stop the dialogue about race. You know, it's a way to undercut a professor who has a PhD in race and ethnic studies, right? Well, I'm 19 and I literally had one student who was 19 and I was asked to deliver a talk to about 200 people at UC Denver. You know, they had just read one of my articles that was published in the most renowned race and education scholar.
She's like, listen
journal,
to me, listen to me.
in London,
I have a PhD.
And she stood up and said this in front of everyone. She said, when I read this, I was like, who, okay, I'm sorry, I'm totally doing total, right, stereotypes. But she did. She was kind of like, who the fuck does this bitch think she is?
Good for her. Good for her. Good for her.
And
I have a PhD. I'm going to say, who the fuck does this bitch think she is telling white people they're all racist? Who the fuck do you think you are? I have a PhD. You have to respect me because I have a PhD. I have a PhD in psychology, which means you can't question anything that I said in today's webinar, Asian lady. This woman is not allowed to question any of my analysis of what she said because I have a PhD, and if she's setting the standards that you should never be able to question a person with a PhD, then you can't question any of my analysis today for this webinar because you have a degree in whiteness. Okay, I have a PhD in effing psychology. I would never actually pull my PhD out like that, just so you guys know. I literally only pull my PhD out like that when I'm trying to annoy someone. That's it. The only people who have to call me doctor are the people who I'm pissed at, who are making my life difficult, and then I'll demand you call me doctor just to like make you angry. But like, I would never, just so you guys know, I would never actually pull my PhD out like this woman is just pulling her PhD. Like, I have a PhD. You must listen to me because a PhD is just an expensive piece of paper. It just means I read a lot of research and I did a research study and I wrote a really long paper about that research study. But like, there's nothing fancy about having a PhD, okay? It doesn't actually make you smarter than the average people. It just means you spent a lot of time reading research and writing about research and analyzing research. That's all it means. Twin Tail says psychology is white supremacy, while the APA, the American Psychological Association, does actually think that. They do actually think that. They had passed an entire resolution on that. Man.
You know, the Cheryl from the block would have beat her down, but you know, the professor, Dr. Matthias, took it in as a good teachable moment because everyone was like, I felt bad because even the other white students like, you know, she's not with us. You know, she's a racist. You know, it's like, it's all these like distancing things. Well, I'm not one of them, you know? And I literally just said, you know, thank you for showing how the emotionalities of whiteness can be so entitled.
Murphy's Pool. Oh my God. I need to write this down. Okay. Murphy's Pool wants to create our official, maybe this will be the official happy hour drink. We need to come up at some point with a happy hour cocktail. Next week, tall glass filled with ice, 2 shots of vodka, then fill all the way with pink Moscato. I enjoy a good Moscato, man. I do. It's a very sweet wine. It's something that I drink on the cruise. If I'm going on a cruise, oh God, I want to go on a cruise so bad. I want to go on a Caribbean cruise so effing bad. I drink Moscato on a cruise like all the time. Moscato. I don't even know how to pronounce it. But I'm going to take a screenshot of this so I remember it. 2 shots of vodka, then fill all the way up. We're going to remember that. That's going to be the official happy hour drink.
To your professor like that, I said, I want you to consider if you would ever speak to
Don't whip out your
an older white male
PhD.
professor in the manner that you have just done. You know, and then of course you hear, I even hear now. Right? So it's really interesting to see how even emotions can be a way to engage in very supremacist ways, right?
Wait,
So one of the questions.
did she just say that emotions can be a way to engage in very supremacist ways? I was thinking about that cocktail in my head. I was like, I bet that's good. And she busts out with emotions can be a way to engage in very supremacist ways. These are the jewels that we only get on happy hour. Hang on.
It's really interesting to see how even emotions can be a way to engage in very supremacist ways.
Come on.
So one of the questions you said here, well, how are whites involved in this? How are they being dehumanized? Well, if we think of racism as being the main problem, we're only thinking of part and parcel of what the whole dynamic. In fact, my professor said racism is not the problem, which we almost beat him down, right? The real problem is white supremacy. We wouldn't have issues of racism if we didn't have ideologies and institutions of white supremacy, correct? There wouldn't be an issue. So that's what we need to think about. When we think about it this way, then we know that whites,
as long as you're not
also are
drinking
impacted
Miller
all the
High
other
Life.
different
Miller High
ways,
Life is the
just like
ultimate
how
low.
patriarchy
Bud Light,
impacts men
it's
and
water.
women, albeit in various different
It's
ways.
water.
Ableism impacts
but
people with
give you a pass.
able-bodied as opposed to various
Yeah,
abilities.
emotions are
correct?
racist, probably.
So we're looking at this more systemically, right? We're both impacted. We're all impacted. So, but albeit with specificities. Here we see whites are impacted by whiteness. And there's all these elements right here, right? Of whiteness, from the white gaze, from surveillance, feeling, I don't know, how many of you are faculty members here? Faculty members? Okay, we got some female faculties, we got some female faculty of color. I mean, women, don't you realize that you're always under surveillance? It's like, why is your laptop open during a faculty meeting? You're like, dude, everyone else's laptop.
No
open.
one
What
does
are you
that.
Doing? Why are you not on campus on Wednesday? It's like, dude, will you really keep tabs on me? Put a low jack on me then, you know? So you're seeing that, but we also know that whiteness can impact people of color, okay? So that's how you know, albeit through a different way, you know, it's kind of like that whole thing where women have to engage in masculine, you know, traits to get recognized in a masculine world. Do you guys listen to, what is it, StoryCorps? NPR? There was this story of an exec,
defund NPR. Defund
like,
NPR.
The female exec was like,
yeah, fortify that like button, guys.
She has a high voice, right?
John Morgan caressed to the like button. Thank you, John.
At the boardroom. And so she actually, what she decided to do as her own like experiment is to engage in masculine traits. So she made her.
If you wonder why we mount the like button, there is, God damn it, wrong tube again. There is literally a video on my main channel explaining why we mount the like button. This is actually a thing. It's a Joshua thing. So there is a video on my main channel, if you want to go search for that, that explains explicitly why we mount the like button instead of smashing it or doing any of those things. I mean, you can do whatever you want to the like button. The like button's not going to talk back. The like button is going to accept whatever punishment you give it. If you want to mount it, if you want to fortify it, if you want to gently caress the like button, whatever you want to do that like button, man, I'm not going to judge. You're an adult. It's up to you.
Voice deeper. She started using statistics that come out of nowhere.
Well, welcome, Live Free and Die.
I don't know, you know, or as my son says, 33% of statistics are not real. I'm like, okay. I always say to my kids, cite your source, you know? So she started to engage in that, and she actually started getting more respect in the boardrooms. So
You can do
as much
bingo
as I
next
can say
week. It's okay.
whiteness
Bingo will
impacts
always be
people
here.
of color, and it does. We said not all skin folk are kinfolk, right? It still oppresses people of color when people of color engage in these behaviors too, right? But the thing is, we have to realize we're living under one state of white supremacy. How do we survive?
You
Some
seem to
people
be
choose
doing
go
rather
one way,
well.
some people choose to go. My
Wait,
sister,
how do you survive? Lady, you just made a big show about the fact that you have a PhD and people should listen to you. How do you survive under a system of whiteness? You have a PhD and you seem to be lecturing around the country at universities and teaching teachers about how to be teacher educators and infusing critical race theory into their classroom, even though it's only taught in law schools. But mysteriously, you're a whiteness educator that's also a teacher educator. You seem to be doing just effing fine. You're surviving. You're alive. Everyone in that room is alive. No one has prevented you from doing anything or saying anything. You've probably never been banned on social media. You probably claim racism and sexism every effing day when someone says something you don't like. How do you survive? You're not only surviving, you're dictating the goddamn discourse.
oh my gosh, her name is
Sorry, I
Heidi
got a little
Lancaster.
feisty. Sorry.
She is as German name sounding as possible, right? She is blonde and blue-eyed. And then you got her sister, and she's 5'8", and she's got things augmented to, to be more Barbie-esque. And you got this little one here who's brown and proud, right? We all engage in our socialization processes in different ways. It's how we survive. In fact, if you haven't read Albert Memmi's book, The Colonizer and the Colonized, he clearly talks about in the state of colonization, how we have to engage. What are the different identities? For someone in the colonizer position, they're not always just colonizers. There's also colonists who resist it, who know it's wrong, right? For colonizers, different people, one who accept the state of colonization and engage in these processes, and those who resist but will be forever alienated and ostracized from the community, like BLM, right? Constantly ostracized for doing what's humanly correct, right? Just asserting that Black lives do matter. Okay, so you're seeing this. Now we are all implicated in this. We're all screwed up now. You're all sinners, I guess, Oh my goodness, I don't let my mom ever hear this one. Blasphemy. So some of you asked, well, how does whiteness impact everything? And here's just a quick breakdown of how it engages in various realms. You're talking about, for example, let's look in history. We talk about Howard Zinn, talking about the Eurocentrism in US history. When we're talking about literature, those of you English majors, right? You're talking about Toni Morrison. She's talking about the canonical literary status always being that of whiteness. And we know this in movies because the Black guy's always the sidekick. Or we even joke around about it because the Black guy in the scary movie, what? He dies first, right? I mean, they even joke about it. We already know this mantra. In fact, oh my gosh, anyone watch Walking Dead? I can deconstruct the racial implications in that. Like the one Latina girl is only booty for the white man, right? Have you noticed that? And then the one Black woman, Michonne, she's dope. Tell me, you watch Walking Dead. Am I by myself in this? Walking Dead watchers? Or I'm speaking to y'all. Michonne, she is one bad Black woman, right? She's swords all of them, right? But the first season, she barely even talks. She grunts like an animal. It's this whole anti-Blackness, like she's like, and she's carrying her like brothers and, on chains. And then all of a sudden she just becomes a mammy for the guys.
I've never watched The Walking Dead before. Is that true? How would anyone who watches The Walking Dead assess that? Patrice says she didn't even bring up the token Black man dying every season. That was an obvious one in The Walking Dead. I once had dinner with a woman whose husband starred in The Walking Dead, but I've never watched it. I have no idea. I know it's about zombies. Anyway, let me know if you agree with her assessment in the chat. I haven't seen it. I've actually thought about watching The Walking Dead lately. I need a new show. Victor and I have been watching. We've been watching the Okay, so I got a new iPhone, so we got 3 months free of Apple TV, so we're taking advantage. We've been watching The Invasion And we've been catching up on season 2 of The Servant. We watched the first season. We haven't watched the second one yet. Let me know what you guys think.
Little girl, right? Which is a very, if you learn Black feminism, it's a role that Black women are forced to face, this mammification, right? So you're seeing all that, in
I might watch
and
Gone
in
with the
movies.
Wind after this, just
We're
for
seeing it in
good
education.
measure.
We're seeing
Gone
it,
with the Wind, it's a
even
good
in
movie.
labor, someone asked, well, where's it come from? Well, let me give you an example in labor movements. After the great 1860 Great Migration.
Jamie has the answer. Okay. She's a great character. She is very closed off at the beginning, trying to protect herself after an intense trauma. That is actually a thing, as it turns out. Thank you for the update, Jamie. I appreciate that.
You remember that, right? Black slaves were freed. And you think they're going to stay in the South? No. Where did they go? They moved up north, right? After 1860. When they moved up north, what's the first thing after you graduated high school? Your parents said you either go to college or get a
job.
Okay, so they went to go get a job in the northern cities, right? Well, there was already what Rodiger calls white ethnics who had jobs, right? He calls them Poles, Slavs, the Irish, the Jew, right? So you're seeing all these white ethnics have jobs. You're seeing this influx of African Americans also taking jobs. And actually the working conditions are kind of booty, right? So what do? They start banding together saying, yo, this ain't right. Don't be treating us like this. So that's a good thing, right? You're seeing unity. That's why when you think of the Black Panther Party, you don't realize that there were Japanese leaders in it, right? From San Francisco. And you actually look, there's been cross collaboration all the time. But what did whiteness do? What did labor movements do? They said, okay, we'll start labor unions, but only certain people can participate. Who can participate? White people can only participate.
So you're,
scabs.
So you're saying, who started labor unions? Let me ask it a different way. What political faction supports labor unions? Is it the right or is it the left? What political side supports labor unions? I've never supported unions. Not even when I was a Democrat. They're a giant pain in the ass. What political side, left or right, supports labor unions? Alexander Martin, left. So you're saying, Asian PhD person, you're saying that labor unions, which are notoriously supported by the progressive left, labor unions are the cause of whiteness and racism. Isn't that funny? Isn't it funny? Robin DiAngelo's book is right. Robin DiAngelo's book is probably more accurate than even Robin DiAngelo understands. By her book, I mean the newest one, Nice Racism, which is basically saying the worst people for people of color are white liberals. Exactly. You're saying that freaking labor unions created more racism? Okay. Exactly.
Right? You see that terminologies, right? So you're starting to see how it's been created in history. In fact, you can go back to even something like housing and look at FHA loans, right? Who was it only given to? For whites. They were only allowed to get loans for house. The GI Bill. Who was allowed to partake in the GI Bill after World War II? Whites. You're talking about affirmative action.
Hang on.
That's the biggest affirmative action.
I need confirmation from someone in the chat. Is it true that only white people were able to take advantage of the GI Bill after the World War II? Sin, I'm looking at you. I know that's unfair, but you were in the military. Is that true? I'm betting there's more of a story there. Sin is looking it up for us. Thank you, Sin, for your service. In many ways. Thank you for. Yeah, I don't think that doesn't sound right. That doesn't sound correct to me.
Program ever. In fact, if think about redlining and red zoning, right? You're talking about housing and politics. If people of color, let's just use blacks for example, because Latinos are also a big part of this, right? I'm just going to use blacks for a clear point here. If blacks only can, we're not given loans.
Live free or die.
to buy a
What
house,
like what
they
race
can
is
only
your
afford an
father? I mean, I
apartment
hate to be
and
I hate to be so overt about this, but like what race is your father? Live free or die says my father used the GI Bill. Blacks were taking advantage of the GI Bill after World War II. Yeah, exactly. She just lied. Blacks took advantage of the GI Bill after World War II. Please. I'm mostly against unions because I'm not against it. I think unions take advantage of people is the thing. I think unions take advantage to force people to pay dues to something that they wouldn't otherwise pay dues to. That's why I'm against unions. I don't like this idea that you have to be a member of a union in order to get certain jobs. Oh, Native American. Live free or die as a Native American took advantage of the GI Bill. So now we have a living, breathing example in the chat. Thank you for Live Free or Die. I didn't want to seem racist, but that was the question at hand.
There was redlining. They can only afford apartment in red 5 points, correct? Whites were able to get loans and they bought a nice house in Littleton. Think about the generations thereafter. How much equity do you think one accrued? Compare them both. One didn't accrue anything. And even if they were able to buy a house later, but they weren't allowed to buy in areas that were covenant. In fact, it's kind of strange. If you go south of here, just university, go another 30 minutes south, you'll see communities that still say covenant communities here in Colorado. You know what that means? The covenant was don't sell to a black person or we'll kick your butt, you know? So you're seeing these communities. Think about the equity if you owned a home in Cherry Hills since 1940s to someone who only was able to buy a home in 1980s. In 5 points, because that's the only area you can buy. Well, now I live close there, so I'm making bank, you know. But you know what I'm saying? You're talking about a generation of wealth. You're asking, where does whiteness come from? It comes from the fabric of our history. In fact, there's text there for you to see. So it's important to understand this is not about a few white people gone wrong, right? This is a larger issue, something that is historically embedded, so much so we don't even think about it. In fact, in today's speech, more like the 80s during the Reagan times, they made Black women be welfare, painted them as well. Yet Black women are not the largest recipients of welfare. White women are. And in fact, you're looking at one who was, as I finished a PhD with 2 kids as a single mom.
She's not white.
Okay? So we
sorry, you're not white.
Connotations of what race has.
I'm sorry. I
don't
want. Didn't she call herself a person of color early? I mean, she's obviously Asian. You can. I mean, maybe I shouldn't be assuming, but she's obviously Asian. She called herself a person of color earlier. Now she's like, this white lady took advantage of welfare. I mean, this is the problem, right? This is the problem because Asians are sometimes considered white. They consider them adjacent to being white. She just switched to being a white lady. She literally, before our very eyes, went from being an Asian an hour ago in this presentation to being a white lady now. She switched her race based on what was convenient for the story she was trying to tell. It happened literally right before our eyes. How amazing is that? This is why we do happy hour. It literally, like, the woke ideology plays out literally right before our eyes.
We already have learned. In fact, by age 3, you're already learning that, right? And I talk about the emotionalities of whiteness, you know, and that's very specific. Now, I can either stop right here because I've answered some of your questions, you know, where does it come from? Am I getting to some of these things? Why are whites involved in this? Now, whites, do you see how you're also like screwed up by this? You got the bigger end of the stick, but you didn't get the full stick. You know, we're like fighting over scraps here. You know what I mean? You see what I'm saying? So I think I can go down more. And if we've been socialized in this process for so much that it's okay for someone to say, where are you really from? Or like my white colleagues always having to touch my arm, or hey, girlfriend. It's like, why do you always touch me? I've had so many people in Colorado touch me. Where'd you get that bracelet? And it's like, wow, try that in LA. Just try it. You know, I will bust a kung fu. I don't even know it, but I know it'll come out of me, you know? So it's interesting to see how it becomes so normalized that we literally, it's like a treadmill. You're going to continue walking it. If you stand, you'll still move with it, right? It's only if you actually work against it. When I say, oh, are you from Ireland? Where they start to see that they're actually putting some kind of effort, even though it's minimal and unrecognizable, to engage in something that is actually racially disharmonious, right? So now I'm going to stop here. Do you guys want to get down to the psychoanalytics of whiteness?
Oh, yes, let's
Or
do it.
I can give you more.
Let's do
see.
it,
What's your
girl.
questions?
No,
How
let's
whites
do
help?
it.
Well, first, it's really for whites in the room. Understanding this much, does it inform how you might help in the future or your role? Can I get a, okay, all right. So we got some of that. I talk a little bit about global context, right? It's not only about numbers. Now you want to get into this, the shame? You want to know where that shame, and it's very important. Why for people of color is it important? Because that's been passed off onto us. You know, it's kind of like an emotional projection. In fact, let me go back, because someone said, I don't want to recenter whiteness, right? You were saying that? So there's some different examples. Oh, I talk about invisibility. That's for later. No, I'll do that later. I don't know. You're just going to go with me out through all these things until we find some stuff. Okay, so you're talking about how do I not recenter? If you want to do, let's say you're like, I had one of my students, this is a student, a master's student who was a K-12 high school teacher for 11 years at the time, who used to say in class that there needs to be medical detectors in schools like he taught in black and brown school, because black men and Latino men commit most of the crimes.
Did anyone get a bingo?
The most ones in detentions. Well,
how close are we to bingo?
It's true, but it's a very specific use of statistics, right? Not looking at black men are 8 times more likely to be, pulled over and stop and frisk, right? We know that, right? So of course, the whole class was they wanted to like beat him down. So this same student, I kept steadfast. For those of you that do diversity and race work, and don't get caught
One
up
block
on all
for
that in
sin.
white emotionalities, Don't get caught up. Your job as an educator is to
Stephen
teach
is
them
2
his work
squares
so
away,
all
or
this.
1 square away.
So he would like send me these emails saying, "You're such a male projection." Like when
Male
I hate it when you
projection.
finally raise your, you have an argument, let's say with a man, and he's yelling the whole time, and then finally you just can't take it anymore. You start yelling, and he goes, "Why are you yelling?" You're like, "You've been yelling the whole time," So, or like when you start to cry because of the yelling, and he's telling you not to get all emotional, and you're like, "Dude, you've been emotional by screaming and yelling this whole time. What, is anger not an emotion now?" Right? So it's very interesting to see how things are always positioned in this way. So how do we get to a space where we don't engage in the what I call in my book, my first book, the narcissism of whiteness? Because always, all of a sudden, someone brings up, have you
I
ever
kind of
had
want to
that
read her books. I'm
friendship?
not going to lie.
We thought you were close.
Listen.
It's interracial.
She wrote about sadomasochism in her first book, and she apparently wrote about the narcissism of whiteness in another book. I kind of want to read this lady's books. I'm not going to lie. It might drive me crazy, but my hair is getting pretty long. I need something to pull it out. I need something to drive me to make myself bald again.
And then or maybe it could be white and white, one more woke than the other. And then you try to talk about race, and then something like, hey, it really hurts me when
Lisa, this is
make
the
the
University of
assumption
Denver.
that,
University of Denver.
all Latino people do is do sexual salsa dancing, and we just eat tortillas. You know what I mean? Like we reduce our culture to those 2 monikers, right? And that person, all of a sudden, it becomes about them. How could you even
Is she
Call me a
Asian
racist.
or
You're like, I
Latino?
never said that. I never even used that word. How can you make me feel so bad? What kind of friend do you are you to me? And all of a sudden, I know 15 minutes later, it's about her. How many of you have had that issue? All right.
She's not
That's
answering the question,
narcissism
by
of
the way.
whiteness happening, right?
Yeah,
All
apparently
of a
she's
sudden,
Latino now.
it really is like you're talking about race. And even in a large, try this. I'll give you a Facebook challenge later. You'll talk about something about race, about maybe folks of color or
Yeah,
women or
yes.
that. And then all of a sudden it becomes about how Irish had it hard. You're like, well, it's kind of like some of you who were there yesterday when I was teaching the class.
Well, the Irish did have an entire famine that they had to deal with, which is how a lot of them ended up here. The Irish didn't have it hard. They just had a famine and had to eat potatoes forever. My God.
And all my students were like into, the book of Zeus Leonardo's Whiteness, Education, and Race. Really good book. You should get that. We're all talking about it, learning about it, narcissism of whiteness. We're like getting down in it. And then one of the white girls said, this whole narcissism is about millennials. Right? You're like, where did that?
Emphasize, thank you for the super chat. She committed a cardinal SJW sin. Her granny is Russian, and she is an LA Latina mom right out of the movie Orange County, but she just centered whiteness as her ethnicity. Is that all true? Did you look her up? She looks Asian to me. Is that true? Or did you make that up? I'm gonna trust you. I trust people who send me as many super chats as you do. That's probably a horrible reason to trust someone. People could trick me into all sorts of things, but I feel like we have a rapport, and I appreciate the support. But did you actually look? Oh, did she talk about that? It's the beer. You're doing better than I am. Emphasize. Thank you. She looks Asian though. She definitely looks Asian right now. Sin, fair point. Some Russians are Asian. I mean, Russia is actually in Asia, as it turns out. All right, let's keep going. We got 20 more minutes.
Come from? Are we in the same class? Calculus is down the way.
Also, apparently, I might actually be nominated for governor of New Hampshire at the LPNH convention next week. So let's just, hang our heads on that for a little minute. That's kind of a joke. I will not actually be running for governor of New Hampshire. No, don't anyone get their hopes up. I'm not running. Probably not running.
Way, but you see
Little
what I'm
update
saying?
from the
All of a sudden,
chat.
it doesn't really jive. It all of a sudden, and then she starts crying and saying, "I don't feel safe in this space." And then all my students, even students of color, were like talking about how I never felt safe as a Black woman.
No, I don't want to run for governor.
Woman. And they were all like trying to coddle that behavior for about 45 minutes. And then
I can't win. They're going to say I'm an anti-Semite. I can't win now.
And I was telling the group yesterday, I was raised by a Filipina Catholic mom.
Filipino, she is Asian.
Said, no, class, thank you for showing how
she is Asian. I told you guys she was Asian. Filipino mom, Asian. Please, I ain't gonna run for governor, guys. Come on. Maybe someday in the future I will seriously run for governor. I'll pretend I'm Jewish. That's not the worst idea in the world. Live free or die. I'm starting to like you. You can stick around. You are welcome to stay. Not everyone is welcome to stay, but you are welcome to stay. We're going to get along just great.
Listen, how easy it is to be complicit to whiteness. Class is over, type of deal. And they're like, no, wait, professor, we'll talk about it. I'm like, no, I want you to feel the shame. No, I'm kidding. No, but I did let them feel the shame. But you know what I'm saying? Because that's how it recenters. All of a sudden, we're talking about this great understanding of whiteness, how it impacts the plight of people of color, as well as for whites. Now we're looking at it as a whole thing, right? We're easy to know the racial microaggression. We're not understanding what's the X factor, which leads to the racial microaggression.
Are Jews allowed to have tattoos?
Racial oppression. Right now, we're starting to see us all interconnected.
Are they allowed
in this realm?
I don't know.
So I
probably
talk a
not.
little bit. I have a new publication coming out, but I talk a little bit about critical whiteness studies. You know now a little bit about
Oh God. Nick H says, I'm having Joshua see what your chances are of winning. Joshua already psychicked this. There's a clip on my other channel. Joshua already psychicked this. He said that if I ran for governor, I better be prepared to win. So no, I don't want to be governor of New Hampshire. I really do not want to be governor of New Hampshire. At least not yet. No, I'm not prepared to be governor yet. Someday I may be prepared. But today is not that day.
whiteness. So tell me one of the most famous works about understanding white privilege, which is an aspect of whiteness, right? How many have read about the
Happy
backpack?
hour always goes off the rails at the
Backpack,
end.
Backpack. Okay, so you've read about the backpack, the invisible net, and she gives you that list, right? In fact, white privilege has become a buzzword to show that I'm not racist.
You guys are not
In
tricking
fact,
me
I
into
get all
running
these
for
teacher
governor,
candidates coming
okay?
into the room, and they're like, I'm an ally because I understand I have white privilege. Ba-bum, bum, I'm not a racist, you know? And I say, okay, well then what kind of white privilege have you accrued, you know, at the expense of communities of color? And they'll say, well, I got this. I read Peggy McIntosh. I understand it's really unfair that my Band-Aids match my skin and that people of color don't have Band-Aids that are their skin. I was like, no. You know, you can't equate that to some of the issues that communities of color are facing. In fact, I did like about 5 years ago, I had to host a mother and a parent.
Sin. Since like after the third beer, Carla will say yes to running for governor. That's probably true, Sin, but guess what? We only have 20 minutes left and I still have a little bit of this beer left to go. You're not seeing that third beer today. I'm sorry. Maybe next time. Maybe I'll have to find a longer training next time and you guys can get me really slushed and then I'll be like, ugh. But you know what? Next week's happy hour. Okay, so guys, programming note. I may have to schedule next week's happy hour a little bit earlier because the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire, our convention is next weekend. And there's a dinner on Friday that I'm going to. Victor and I are going to go out and have fancy dinner. We're going to hear Jeremy Kaufman speak. And then on Saturday, we are going to conduct the business of the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire. But I might have to move happy hour a little earlier so I can get ready to go to dinner with the Libertarians, is all I'm saying. Where I will not be running for governor. I don't think, probably.
Community forum because Black parents and mothers were afraid after Michael Brown that their children won't come home.
Pro tip, Lisa. Thank you.
Not because there's gangs on the street, not because there's some drug dealer around the corner, but they're afraid they're going to be shot.
Pro tip.
In fact, I had that hard conversation with my own twins, boy, girl, brown skinned son. He's more brown skinned.
I am in Merrimack.
She looks more Asian, you know? And so talking to my son just a little bit about Trayvon and what happened, because they're already hearing about it. Remember, we can't play dumb with our kids. They know. And we were trying to talk about it. I was trying to be serious and I had the talk. How do you respond if you get pulled over, you know? And so my son was trying to understand this. And
I love you guys. Thank you for keeping me sane.
And he's laughing and I start screaming and crying. I'm like, I'm serious. You're cute now. When you are 5'10", they're not going to think you're cute. And you're 14. Or let's say you're 12 and you're Tamir Rice. You know what I mean? So I'm saying, and then my son started saying, well, Mommy, what do I do if I need my inhaler? And honestly, I didn't know how to answer that. So these are some of the context that we're going to have to deal with when we're actually having that conversation. It's just the understanding that the Band-Aid is not equatable to worrying that your child's not going to come home because they might be shot or they might be bullied or that my mother freaks out that because of the work I do, I'm going to get shot. My mother's an immigrant from the Philippines. She knows that much to say, honey, I love what you do, but I'm afraid you're going to get shot.
Oh, come on.
Because she knows about the U.S. context, right? So this is a really important thing. How do we always make
Wow.
the study of whiteness such that it connects? And we're talking about these theoretical precursors. If we're starting with Peggy McIntosh, you're going to get what you call whiteness studies, right? Because in Peggy McIntosh, she's saying all you need to, and I'm not saying she's wrong. I'm not saying that at all. She's a good starter way, right? But it depends on how you're going to implement critical whiteness studies, right? So, and I get these terminologies from Zeus Leonardo. He calls it whiteness studies and black whiteness studies, right? And I hate to use these binaries, but it makes it more clear, right? So if you're going to use Peggy McIntosh as the basis, like that's where whiteness studies happened, if you're going to think in that manner, that they just need racial awareness, all your studies and research agendas are going to be about, well, how do we develop racial awareness with whites?
Nick, you make a good point. In that if I became governor of New Hampshire and then New Hampshire seceded from the Union, I would ascend to be president of New Hampshire. You make a compelling point. The problem is I'm not altogether sure that I am the best person in the world to lead New Hampshire through a secession movement where we could potentially get invaded by the United States. I think that would probably be bad. I think I'm just going to be responsible for a second. I think that I would not be the best choice for that particular task. There would be better options, like a former general or someone of that nature and stature. I would be like, let's secede for lulz on the internet, and then secession actually happens, and I actually have to deal with a military invasion when I have no military experience at all. I'm just going to play this out like a responsible person probably should for a second, because I'm good at making jokes on the internet, and sometimes I say some serious stuff. Let's be honest. I'm serious with a lot of the stuff I'm saying in this. We're having fun too. But I am probably not the best person to lead us through a secession movement. I'm going to be real with you guys. I know what I'm good at. I'm a rabble rouser. I sometimes am pretty good at inspiring people. I'm sometimes pretty good at teaching people stuff. I'm not good at leading a state through a secession movement. That's all I'm saying. There are better people. Let's nominate those people and get those people elected. Sometimes we have to be responsible. Sometimes, no matter how funny something would be or how many good memes it would make on the internet, we have to say there is a better course of action than nominating me for governor.
Do you not see that kind of work out in different fields? Developing racial awareness among whites? I know you do in every field, right? So that's what you're seeing. That's going to be McIntosh, right? You're going to see it citing mainly white scholars. Like when I ask you, where did whiteness studies come from? People are quick to say Peggy McIntosh. People are quick to say Tim Weiss, right? You're quick to, well, nowadays, and like I said, I give my, my kudos to Dr. Robin DiAngelo, right?
Exactly.
So you're going to see all these kind of work of whiteness. But whiteness did not start with Peggy McIntosh. Instead, if you do a black whiteness studies, you're going to be rooted in a different epistemological thought, and being rooted in a
black whiteness studies? What the fuck is black whiteness studies?
Questions. You're no longer trying to raise awareness, because with black whiteness studies, the argument here is that they've done known. In fact, they've been so masterful, as Bonilla Silva says, that they know how to talk about race without ever engaging the word race, right? It's also these semantic maneuvers he calls, right? Like, when you say someone, if you say, the reason you don't want to live in a diverse neighborhood is like, well, the schools are a little rough around the edges. That means, according to Bonilla Silva, it's 40% mainly folks of color. That's he found that to be the number. If it's 40%, it's just too much. I can handle DU diversity. No, I'm just not messing. But you know what I'm saying? When it kind of changed, I had some folks of color go, man, she told truth. No, I kidding. But you see what I'm saying, right? It becomes this space where we're okay, or like, let me just use teachers. Teachers are okay having K-12 students of color. They say they love their students, and I joked around, so pedophiles. But They say they love their students. I said, well, you love that K-12 student when they become your boss because you love them so much that you have this racial dynamic. In fact, I did surveys with my teacher candidates, and it was so mainly white. It's gotten a little bit more diverse in the past decade. But they were saying, yes, I've had a lot of.
So Gypsy Witch Productions, white person of color, basically means you like you're like white or Asian or not white. Like obviously you're like I don't know what your race is. But they oftentimes use white person of color for like Italians. Italians are white people of color. Are you Italian? It's basically a way of saying you've assimilated to whiteness, but may not actually be white in the way you think about it. Usually that's how they refer to it.
People of color in my life. And they particularly talked about their nail girl. One even said the medical receptionist that she goes to often is a person of color. And she went on to argue how she is so much nicer
Italians
than white people. I'm like, girl, she's serving you. We just have to say, yes, massa. And it's all good. The minute we stand up and say, actually, we don't agree, it's like, oh, she's so aggressive.
Well, I'm going to say this. If I'm paying you $50 to paint my nails and it's only going to last for like 2 weeks, if I'm getting the gel nail polish, which like regular nail polish lasts much less than that. But if you're getting the gel nail polish, it'll last for 2 weeks. If you're actually being paid $50 to do my nails, then you are in service to me and I don't want to hear any back talk. I just want a pretty sparkly nail polish that I can enjoy until it starts to chip away. That's all I want. Is that too much to ask? I want my hands massaged. I want a nice clean time. I don't want to talk about race when you're doing my nails. It's not worth it. I'm just saying. If I become president of New Hampshire, I get to knit a flag. Oh, good. You guys can tell the beer is kicking in and I'm kind of ready to be done, but we have about 10 more minutes. We're going to power through. I'm not even commenting on what she's saying anymore. We're just enjoying the insanity. Maybe I'll comment on something if I feel like it, but I'm just saying, if I'm getting my nails done, I don't want to hear any back talk.
It becomes such an interesting thing. Like when I assert my expertise in race, all of a sudden, she's such a mean, aggressive professor. I'm like, dude, don't even try
Sicilian.
to do that
Gypsy is
thing
Sicilian.
Try to say that
Listen,
I'm an angry brown
look at this.
chick.
Look at this. White people of color. What is Gypsy? Sicilian. It's for Italians. They call Italians white people of color. That is a real thing. People thought I was joking when I did that video. Holy shit. That's hilarious. That's hilarious.
I am 5 feet tall. You know, like don't even go there. So you're seeing how it's going to have different approaches if you think in various different ways. In fact, with Black whiteness studies, we're not drawing from Peggy McIntosh. W.E.B. Du Bois, since 1903, was talking about whiteness, albeit not in that very specific words, but he's talking about white behaviors, right? We know that James Baldwin was already talking about whiteness, right? He even says, I'm not going to agree to your morality because my mom sees what you do, right? In fact, I have a t-shirt that says, I don't believe what you say because I see what you do. You know, that's James Baldwin. We know that to be, he's the main person in I'm Not Your Negro, you know, in that documentary. Or you're going to talk about Toni Morrison, who's talking about the literary canon being for whiteness. You're going to talk about people who are actually engaging in whiteness studies long before Peggy McIntosh. And their approach is, you know, but you have so suppressed it in ways that are so unhealthy that if we ever engage in it, it becomes a fight to defend your shame, right? I didn't get to the psychosocial part yet. I'm just looking on the whiteness one. So if you actually engage in more of a Black whiteness study, you're not really looking at developing racial awareness because they've done known. You're preoccupied with showing how whiteness is masterfully executed. You know? Oh, I didn't intend to treat her. I didn't intend that. So that's a power
That was
play,
so
right?
in
In a way to absolve yourself from
the ironclad law of woke projection right there. She is literally mocking white people in a way that is incredibly racist. and then says it's a power play. This entire presentation is a power play. This entire presentation is helping people to gain more political effing power by throwing the term racism around like it means nothing. That was ironclad law of woke projection in action right there.
From racial microaggressions. When we're talking about white privilege, we're looking at Macintosh, and then I don't know if you know Zeus Leonardo's list in the color of supremacy. He has an article, and it's in his book, one of the chapters. He gives you an extensive list. In fact, those of you diversity teachers, how about you do this pedagogically? Take Macintosh's list, just the list, and take Zeus's list, which has actual citations.
I'm literally being nominated to run for governor right now in the Libertarian Signal group. This is happening in real time. It's not real. It's not for real. It's just to spite people. It wouldn't be a real campaign. You guys are getting the play-by-play as they're talking amongst themselves. Like I'm not even involved. Like I shouldn't even have to agree to this. They're hatching a fucking plan right now to nominate me for governor out of spite.
To prove, like seriously, like housing discrimination, during FHA loan discrimination, right? Give them the two lists and then do this little thing. I take a little piece of paper and I write I say, this is my prediction, and I put it down. And then I asked them the question after they read it. I said, so which one did you find spoke to you more? Which one do you think they're going to find that spoke to them more? Macintosh. Why? It's more palatable for me. Like, why do you need to be? And I put up my prediction. I'm like, wow, is whiteness so predictable? We're always saying that white folks need to, meet them where they're at. Yet I was 5 years old that my dissertation was called, Where Are You Really From UCLA. That whole interlude actually happened when I was 5 years old at kindergarten.
Oh,
please. Stand up on
please.
here. This Cheryl this is such a unique name.
She wrote her dissertation about her lived experience when she was 5 years old. I wanna look up this lady's dissertation now. You're not allowed to write a dissertation about your own lived effing experiences. Now, in my dissertation about workplace bullying, I had to write a small segment about my lived experiences because I was actually being bullied in my work environment as I was completing my dissertation about workplace bullying. So I had to add a small section saying I was bullied while I was completing this dissertation. And so this is how this might have influenced my ideas in this dissertation. But you're not allowed to write about your own lived experiences as part of your dissertation. That is the entire fucking point of a dissertation. You are supposed to be executing research. My God. I may have backed myself into a corner. It's true. It's true. Whatever.
Cheryl Matthias. What is this? Matthias? I'm like, I'm here. And she's like, oh, where are you from? I'm from LA. Especially it's a big thing in immigration families where you're the first American born. It's a big thing. My mom always said, you're American. In fact, I lost my language, my home language, because my mom and my grandmother speaking Spanish and Tagalog were always like, no, make her American. Not knowing 4 generations later, all of us don't speak, right? So here I am. And then she said, no, where are you really from? And I started crying. I said, I'm from here. Mommy said I'm an American. She said, no, you're not.
Oh, bullshit.
So, but I was
bullshit.
5 years old, and now at 25,
that did not happen. That absolutely. Do any of you have any recollection of any conversation that you had as a 5-year-old that would have gone that? Are you kidding me? This lady is teaching this in a college class. This is at the University of Denver, and she's teaching them that she was told that she's not an American at 5 years old, and she please, that did not happen. That is made up. They've done studies about how people will implant memories in their own head that didn't happen. What was the documentary that came out? It was a long time ago. I mean, this documentary was probably like 15 years old, but there was a documentary about children who had the idea that they were abused implanted into their head by their therapist. Does anyone know what I'm talking about? Like, people can put memories in their head that did not happen, that did not exist. It is actually not that hard to do it. She is a liar. No, that didn't happen. Please.
I try that with you. But you see, some people believed it. They're like, yeah, girl, millennial. Or I don't even know what they're called now. The one younger than you, my kids, teenagers. Oh, whatever, they crazy. my child would answer me with YouTube, you know. But you're talking about here that no one made it palatable to me when I was 5 years old. In fact, when those of you that made it yesterday was talking about Efferly, Professor Efferly, talking about as a black man at 10 years old, that one music teacher wouldn't even talk to him for the whole year, right? And how, and he's a man in his prime, you know, we'll say like 50, a prime age, right? Good prime age. And he still remembers that. It's traumatized him to this point, right? And you're talking about no one made it palatable for him. No one met him where he's at. You know what I mean? So why do we have to coddle? Sometimes you, what is it? What my daughter actually said this. Sometimes, Mom, you just need to cut the umbilical cord. You know? So in the same respects, you keep coddling, if you keep giving a scaffold, if you keep crutching them, they're never going to engage in the raw emotions one needs to do to have the emotional fortitude to do the work of race. It's always like, wait, I'm being unfettered. You know, like, no, feel it. Feel it. Know that it's something that has been embedded and socialized into a process for a long time, such that you react to the word race and not the word unicorn, right? So it's such an important thing to know where you're drawing from, because whiteness scholarship will take you down one path. You'll do research on trying to build racial awareness. If you're going to go down a black whiteness scholarship, you're not building a racial awareness. There's already a mastery. In fact, those of you that are philosophers, any philosophers?
No, there are no philosophers in the room.
All right, I got you one. That's my girl from CU Denver. What's whoop whoop? You know. Wow. So we're talking about
this lady is so desperate to be liked. Are any of you guys getting this sense? She is so desperate to be liked. She is so desperate for acceptance. That's the I have always told you guys, I do not like, people say that the woke are narcissists. I do not believe that the woke are narcissists. I believe the woke have a profound lack of self-esteem and self-worth, and that's why they look for validation outside of themselves. That's why they say your intent doesn't matter, because they're only worried about the impact on them, because they aren't capable of accepting themselves and taking responsibility for their own feelings. They just want everyone around them to validate them at any given moment. Emphasize says, so is she complaining that no one taught her to be an activist at 5 years old in order to catch 22 the entire US population sooner? Yes. Emphasize, I think you summarized that beautifully. You summarized that beautifully, dude. Well done. All right, we're wrapping this up. 4 more minutes. 4 more. Oh, God. Let me just read to you what was... The libertarians right now are seriously planning to nominate me for governor at the convention next week. Let me just read you. One person said, "We don't run her like so." They're gonna call me Hitler's handmaiden. I do not agree. I do not consent. It was a joke. It was a joke. That's not serious. That's not seriously going to happen, okay? I am not running for governor of New Hampshire. I might only run for the Libertarian Party nomination for governor of New Hampshire as a clever ploy to spite people. My God. All right. Last 4 minutes. Deborah says it's karma. I must run. God damn it. I don't want to be governor. I don't want to do it. This is gonna get clipped to high heaven if I end up running for governor. They're gonna be like, look at all these videos of Carlin saying she doesn't want to run for governor and she doesn't want to be governor and she doesn't want to lead New Hampshire through a secession movement. Thank you, Lisa. I appreciate that. Phoenix wasn't even my best speech. I gave many better speeches.
That Charles Mills, who's an
I'm not
if you
even
have
drunk.
not read the
I
racial
swear,
contract,
I maintain it. I'm
write
not
that one
drunk
down as well.
yet.
And he's actually a really bomb dude. Like I bachata with Dr. Mills, you know, the Jamaican man.
That's why you guys watch
you know,
Happy
and
Hour. You
he-
just want to see me get
but
sloshed on
he
the
missteps
internet.
and I was like, no, we're not doing that. We're not doing dance hall. You know, no, I'm just kidding. But you're seeing what I'm saying here. When you read Charles Mills, he makes the argument that there's no racial ignorance. In fact, there's an active way. He talks about racial ignorance as an active way to feign ignorance, as a way to not be responsible. You know, if I say
Yes.
well, I don't know.
Yes.
Well, officer, if we break a law and we say we didn't know,
Let's just be honest. You guys like me because I say the things that you all want to say, but I say them out loud. Yes, Nick H. My campaign slogan would be, I know where you live. Yes. Absolutely.
is that good enough reason? Yeah, see? But officer, I did not know we can't go 120 miles on the freeway. That doesn't cut it. Not knowing, feigning ignorance is not enough. Yet we know that the racial power is there so that when whites engage in this, it's good enough. In fact, it's so weird for me for someone who says they can't see race, yet be the determiner of what is and is not racist. How do you know that if you can't see it? Right? Like, would you trust an oncologist with your cancer if they don't believe cancer exists? Right? Like, how do you know what's cancer, doc? You can't see it, right? So it becomes a very interesting display, right? A power right there.
What?
So that's a quick.
Did she just say that doctors don't know what cancer are, but you know when you see it? Did I hear that correctly? I don't want to rewind. That's too weird.
Racial. Oh man, we have only 5 minutes. So I'm going to stop right there. I didn't get to the psychoanalytics. You got to get my book. But I think it's important to look at these aspects in such a larger way. And
She's just
hoping I
making
got
shit
some
up.
to solve
She's
your
literally just
questions
making
here,
shit up.
where it comes from, how it's maintained. But I think it's important.
Maybe
talk
I'll
a little
sell
bit
signs to
more
say
about
that anyway,
the
John.
psychoanalytics. I'm actually doing another talk for the Hermanas Latinas in February 12th. So I will be here at the Women's College. So, and I give for those of you that want to engage in it more. But I'll be doing a talk a little bit how you move a research on the evolving state of race, how it changes your methods and changes your theories that you use. So that's more methodological. And I can talk a little bit more about psychoanalytics further later, maybe one-on-one. But I do have 2 books, Feeling White, that's been out, and Surviving Becky's just came out 2 weeks ago.
Surviving
Right?
Becky's?
So, Surviving Becky's out. The paperback won't be released until a year later.
Holy
so I know
shit.
right now you're look at Amazon and be like, girl, I'm like, I know. You know, it's that whole capitalistic thing, you know, they gotta make money with it.
Capitalism! We got capitalism in there. Yay! At the very end, capitalism. It's always mentioned.
Whiteness course
Always.
in spring, both undergrad for sociology and for graduates under the higher ed catalog. So I will be teaching that so you can get more in depth. And then I'm here for the
I'm
year.
so glad we
and
got to
I'm
capitalism.
Just across the way, as my doc students are
I'm
Sean, I can
so
tell you.
glad.
I'm just at CU Denver, so not far if you want to have further discussion.
She's at Colorado
So, with
University,
that,
Denver.
I'll do just questions and answer one-on-one. Is that okay? All right. Well, thank you so much for.
Oh, look. University of Denver. All right, guys. That is all we have for happy hour. We made it. We are almost 3 hours into the stream. Now, just a couple more quick reminders. Please mount that like button on your way out the door. Please make sure you subscribe to this channel if you have not already. As a reminder, we usually do happy hours at 5 p.m. on Fridays. but I might have to move it earlier next week simply because I have the LPNH convention and it's already 8 o'clock at night. So I might have to move it just a touch earlier to make sure that I can get ready to go to dinner and be fancy with the libertarians next week. But guys, if you haven't already, I would strongly encourage you, if you liked this presentation or this stream, whatever it is, please consider pre-ordering my book, Actively Unwoke. You can pre-order it on activelyunwoke.com. It is on Amazon. It is on all other manner of things. It's got endorsements from Chris Rufy, Jody Shaw, Paul Rossi, Eric Matheny, Frank McCormick, Dr. Howard Asher. I've got some more endorsements coming that just aren't on the website yet, but you can go and check it out. I'm really proud of this book. Lisa, I don't know if you're saying you got a bingo, but congratulations if you did. And if you want to sign up for some upcoming webinars, you can go to the live events section on Actively Unwoke. We've got some cool stuff coming up. I plugged it earlier. You can see it there. Emphasize says $5 this Orange County, LA mamacita that knows better than anyone else moved to Texas, Florida, or Tennessee in the past 2 years. That would be interesting to find out. Maybe we should do a little follow-up. Guys, if you want to hear more about my book, I did actually read the introduction to my locals last night, and they all seem to like it. So that's pretty great. Speaking of which, if you want to support the work I do, please consider joining my locals community. My locals community is free to join. You can join it at kb.locals.com. But if you want to unlock all of the features, including our 2 Zoom calls every single week, I spent 7 hours on Zoom with 7.5 hours on Zoom with my locals in the past week. We did a 3.5-hour call on Monday. We did a 4-hour call on Wednesday. It was awesome. It was some of the best conversation. I love my locals community. I appreciate you guys so much. We're going to be doing lots of amazing things. Not only just connecting as like human beings and having a sane place to go to, because the internet is a crazy place. My locals is one of the only sane places on the internet. I firmly believe that. We're also going to be doing lots of stuff together for people who want to fight back against the woke chaos in your life. I'm going to be opening up my Unwoke Army exclusively to my local supporters to start, because I need to know that you guys aren't psychos and that I can trust you. I am going to be expanding the Unwoke Army beyond my locals. The Unwoke Army is going to be a group that I'm putting together to help fight back against the woke. We're going to do lots of the strategies you're going to read about in my book. You're going to get support. You're going to get help. You're going to get encouragement. It's going to be awesome. That's going to be opening up next week in my locals, exclusively to my local supporters. I just did a stream about it today. So you can go and watch that stream if you like. But you can join my locals for $5 a month, less than a cup of coffee. You can join it for $50 a year if you want to get 2 months for free. And of course, you can make a one-time gift through my locals and unlock the features in my locals community as a result of that. All right, guys. Thank you for spending some time with me. I'm going to go hang out with Victor, but have a great weekend. I will be back on my main channel on Sunday at 5 p.m. and we'll do effed up news. I don't have a lot of effed up news planned for this week, so I gotta go back through the news of the week and find those crazy stories. But we're gonna have a great effed up news stream on my main channel on Sunday. Have a good one, guys. Happy Friday. We made it through another week. Have a great weekend. I will see you guys on Sunday.